worst part.
We've lost a lot of
Different-
trees this year.
different,
and it's
uh,
really frustrating.
Water pressure and stuff, yeah.
Were you gonna ask, are we gonna name it yet?
Uh,
Linear.
That's
I'm gonna be
off
honest
topic.
with you,
I'm gonna throw that out
I
off topic.
Yeah, and I actually think that linear, we can talk about it later time.
It needs to be.
Why I think there's some not being anything.
Thanks, Chris.
One thing to think about for next year and going forward is, since this is so successful for us for shortening the season, maybe going forward, it's not terrible to start May 1st each year. The farmers
I was
don't,
actually thinking the
the
same
farmers
thing.
don't
I
need
was
it
too.
anymore.
It's cooler.
The reason our suppliers start earlier is because they utilize the runoff. We could utilize runoff too, but they count it against our shares. So it doesn't do us any good to do it any earlier. So something to think about for
Well,
future.
we survived a really dry year,
Yes.
so not every year is gonna be this exceptionally bad.
So if you ever
Well, and
decide,
putting
it
more
could
water
be
on
a
in
future
April doesn't
discussion. but
guarantee you that.
Yeah,
If
it
you
doesn't-
decide to do it in
And
April.
considering if we
when you end
did
up
put
May
that money towards like higher amounts through hotter parts of the summer still, so our water pressure is better.
Right. Yep.
I would totally be for that.
More water volume
Okay,
helps
so
the
we,
pressure.
that would be a future
Yeah.
vote. So
I'm just
let's
saying.
talk about water use, where we're supposed to be at.
Okay, one thing I'm really concerned about is the amount of water being used for construction. This is tough because it's necessary for a couple of things. The EPA requires it for dust control. They have to keep dust down. That's a requirement.
We've seen the danger
And
of
the
dust
way to do it,
storms.
the way to do it is water, right? Now, granted, a lot of the dust is coming off the lake bed, the Great Salt Lake, because there's no water there.
And we can't control that.
Right. But it can be confused with, or is it the construction doing it or not, right? Anyway, so there is a requirement for dust control. The other requirement is they have to meet soil compaction. And the only way to get soil compaction is with moisture.
Yeah.
So, water is necessary for construction. The concern I have is there's awful lot. I'm watching how much water is getting used. So contractors are required, if they use water from our system, they'll do something similar to what this picture is. This is a temporary meter. And you hook it up on a fire hydrant, you'll see these. We have about a dozen of
So
them.
does this come off our share is what you're saying?
Mhm.
This is our
It is.
culinary, not our share.
Yeah.
They're contracted
Okay.
water and our well water. But they meter it and then they pay for it. And our water rates right now are $2 per 1,000 gallons. That has never changed since I've been here, that rate. I have looked at other cities' rates. I'm not saying make a decision right now on what to do for rates. Just, would you like me to consider maybe
I think I'd like to
adjusting
see
it?
what the other cities' rates
So-
are.
Briefly, I know I've looked at our two neighboring cities that West Davis is
Mhm.
building in. So Kaysville and Layton. Layton's $5 per 1,000 and Kaysville is $6.50 per 1,000. So
What are we?
if
Two.
you were $2. So if you think about it, I
Well,
probably
That's
shouldn't
more
say
than
this on
double.
video, but one contractor could say, hey, I'll just buy all my water in Syracuse
And haul it to
Haul it.
another place,
So,
yeah.
but
Which-
this wouldn't just affect
we don't want to be the low price
contractors.
leaders.
I want to make sure this would affect everyone, right?
No.
It would
This
just,
would
That's the
affect-
part-
this is
It would just
that's
affect
what I'm
builders.
interested in.
This would affect extra
Construction.
users.
people getting it off.
That's
of
what
This
I'm
is just
clarifying.
construction.
Just
right?
construction.
So
That's
you
what I
might-
wanted to make sure that this
It
isn't like
might
a
affect
rate raise for
prices
everyone.
or construction
That's what I'm
prices, right?
Is
Well,
there,
and it
But
would
it's
just be
A
this.
pretty small.
So are they tending to just fill trucks and go take it and spray it? Is that what?
Yeah.
I was wondering how it was that they can buy it here in Syracuse but it would be.
yeah, 'cause they fill up with big
transported.
water tanks and just, it
They're
sprays out the back.
Yeah.
If it's less
I'm
than
not saying they do, I'm just
Yeah.
saying it is possible,
for sure.
right? And I am definitely concerned about that because
Sure.
we have a limited amount under our contract.
Right.
Once we exceed that amount, we get a surcharge charged to us for over usage on our system. Now,
Okay.
we have a lot of construction happening right now, so there's a lot of water. Just one of these meters right now, each day is 77,000 gallons on a construction day.
Wow.
77,000, that's equal to 300 homes
So every day
on
that
one day.
spray,
Use
is that what I
300
read?
homes. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the,
Yeah.
Because of
it's a
EPA
lot of water.
required.
So think about that.
That's 300
So
homes
tell me,
used daily.
Is
That's-
there any reason why we can't get a central location where they can pull off secondary?
Yes, thank you. So,
I really don't
Yeah,
like dumping
yeah,
culinary water on
Yeah,
the
why
ground.
are we-
That's
why are
right.
we- Yeah, I wondered.
so I don't have a picture of it, but,
I've seen the little stations where you have a pipe
Yeah.
going up and
so when we did the public works site modifications,
Mhm.
we did stub a line to a hydrant right at where the RV sewer RV pad
Right.
will be constructed.
Right.
And that could easily be changed out to a designated water fill station. And we could have a keypad where they swipe a card, and just like a gas card, it tracks how many gallons, what date, who it was, and then we can bill them, monthly, just off of that.
this would be
card
secondary
use.
water.
I-
It's still culinary.
So it would still be culinary. Secondary,
That's what I thought.
So the
the
question
problem
is,
with
how do
secondary
we-
is it's only, 4 months out of the year or 5 months, right?
Okay, construction's all year.
And construction's all year. So, and we definitely don't want to risk a cross connection either. So designated, if we got rid of all these temp meters throughout the whole city, and then make one spot, designated spot for a fill station, then everyone comes to that one station, it's controlled, and we meter it. This is metered too, but we're able to account for it better and track it and bill.
My only
So-
issue with that is now you've got big trucks driving
Yeah,
all over
why
the city.
is that helpful to have trucks drive
Well,
through
then
there?
it all funnels them to one spot and then
Do we
back
wanna
out
put
again.
But does it,
pressure on
does it
one
really change the
single
water use?
location?
Or,
If it doesn't, then all we're doing is
It may
inconveniencing
not.
people, and I'm not suggesting that, I mean, if we just move them to one spot, does it really change water usage? If not, then,
well, the question is though, also most of the construction's going on the west side anyway, so does it really matter? I mean, there's
I think
central and
it's-
west.
It is, yeah.
There's
Construction's
SR
everywhere,
103 though.
but
Is there difficulty with this setup? We've already invested in the meters.
what
And
is the challenge we're trying to solve here?
better billing and accountability, really.
So we're not,
That's it.
so the point is
We
we're not
don't,
getting.
we don't go
full-
out and meter read these.
So do you think
Oh.
that somebody would come up?
So typically they'll have these until they're done. Then they turn it in. They could have had it for 2 years, 4 years, who knows?
Could
They could be
somebody-
lost.
Could somebody use this?
And then we don't know where it's at.
Like say, working
Yeah,
for a
that's
different
all.
construction company, come over
So
and fill
use
up
someone else's.
before they're there.
They could if they
then-
wanted to.
Are
shoot
they
it. Yeah,
locked
could.
off?
It's possible.
no, they open them and close them as they need to see
Anyone could-
fit.
That's the thing.
That's
anyone
the whole
can
point of
use
them.
any
That's
of
the
it.
other
So
thing.
that is a
Any
problem.
contract would just hook up on someone else.
So the problem is accountability,
Right.
Exactly.
okay?
Yeah.
That is a
So,
real
so,
issue.
is-
so filtering them to one place really would, especially if you have a keypad. How fast could you get that up and going? Is that ready to go, or is it
So
just,
I
pretty
could
quick.
do it once the RV pad's built. Not the RV pad, the RV dump
Right.
is built.
And
I
when's
could add
that?
that to it. There is a cost to these. They're like between 80 to 100 grand for the keypad and everything.
The full
Setup,
setup.
the full setup.
How
But
many,
if
The
you
fees are gonna,
increase your prices could probably help.
how many
offset.
vehicles
Oh,
per
yeah.
day? I mean, what is 77,000
Would it
equate
create
to?
a
At least
bottleneck
all of them too.
I
for
don't know.
use?
Yes.
That
couldn't
was
tell
my
you.
concern is
And
kind
you
of,
guys-
would you create a-
Would it
a
create a
line down the street?
bottleneck? And I don't want to
Possibly,
create a point in the
but
city where we have a lineup of trucks
did
that,
you finish? Or did you-
That was my thought, was just, yeah. How
You
many
guys
per
I
day?
had
don't think it
planned
would. It
you
wouldn't
could-
take too long.
Yeah, haven't you planned a turnaround anyway
Mm,
for all the
yeah,
vehicles
it's-
going to,
yeah.
for using the
It
dump?
wouldn't be terrible, I
So-
don't believe.
okay,
I guess my question is are we solving a problem we don't really have?
Well, it could be a
Sounds like
problem
there
in the
is a
future.
problem.
I know it could be, but have we ever, I know you said the meter could be lost, but
This
if
one
you
could.
pull it off the hydrant,
so
I mean,
So you don't have to-
I
have we
like-
ever lost one?
I like where you're going
Yeah.
with this, but let me ask
Oh,
this.
then it is a problem.
Yeah.
It has, they
So
have.
we
the
have
laws.
lost
The billing
So the-
accountability already is demonstrated as a
The
problem.
question I have, is there another way to solve the problem? If the problem is accountability and and losing a meter, is there a way that we can lock this down to where there's greater accountability? And we understand really, I mean, there's a meter here, so
Why don't we?
why aren't we reading it?
Yeah, that was gonna be my next question. Why don't we just meter read these things once a
Monthly.
month like
Because
everything
they
else?
can move. We don't
They're
know
not
where
there
they're
all the
gonna
time
be.
there.
They could move them all over the city.
Why
Well,
can't, why do
really
we
have a way.
not
And they
See,
don't,
that-
they don't turn them in until.
I think we
That's
need
the
to create a
problem.
rule that we move them and they
Only
don't.
we move them. Or do you think that's a problem? Because now that we've been,
Well, then
got a lot of
it's
labor.
staff time to constantly jump around.
No, staff time of only us moving them is not difficult.
not
It's
staff.
really just tracking where are these things,
And
who
how-
has what.
And how do you prevent
And
somebody to?
It's
take
taken
you?
an enormous amount of admin time, honestly, to try
I
to
see.
keep track of these things.
And how do you,
so that's a different problem, but
It
I
is.
understand there's now a second problem that is the admin time of keeping track of who's using what. And with it already compounded with a low rate, that is a real accountability problem.
Yes.
So the item on the agenda is water use and rates. So I think we're all in accord that we need to adjust the rates to be, I would say midway between the two cities. So make it an even 6,
I would go
550.
high.
What do you guys
Well, I
think?
don't, we're not gonna be able to vote on that.
I know we're not gonna be able to vote on it, but they need a recommendation.
Can we hear, what were you saying, Robert?
he says 5.
I'd make it high. Why not?
Oh, 5,
I mean,
6.
who cares?
Well,
I guess it is
I'm not
actually-
trying to raise prices of homes, but I
Okay,
do want to make
so-
sure that we're at least somewhere in the middle or, yeah,
All right, for
sure.
the purpose of tonight's discussion, can I draw the conclusion that we should visit the rate and
Yes.
discuss it in a meeting where we can vote on it?
Absolutely.
I'll do that.
So.
But I'd like you to come with a
bring the
recommendation.
proposal, But bring the justification with it, and then we'll be able to resolve it.
Sounds great.
Now-
I'll do
And
that.
is there another option besides a keypad that wouldn't cost $80,000 to $100,000 to monitor?
Yeah, and that would be the other consideration. Is there anything?
If you-
that-
I'll
If you'd
check into
seen 10,
that
if you'd said
and,
10 grand, I'd be
see what I
like,
can find.
heck yeah, let's do it.
Yeah,
But at 100
100
grand, suddenly it gives
Maybe
me
we
pause.
just post a kid out there taking names.
grand.
I'm just like,
Yeah, like-
Okay.
I'll bring you more information. on
So
that too.
we're in accord that this will be a future agenda item. We can't solve it tonight, but thank you.
But let's
Stop.
take care of this post haste as
Yeah.
we are in a very,
But I also
Tight
don't
water
make the
here.
next agenda, so we'll just have to rely on Mike to do that, but I think he will.
Steve, gonna-
tell
Hey,
me your
clarification.
name.
So you're saying you want an action item on the next meeting to
Person
vote on a
taking
rate
care
change? We have to notice that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Harsh.
That's
Right.
That's right.
So we want, the next meeting will be a voting meeting, so that can be an action item. But I think we have to rely on the mayor's return for him to agree that it's, or can we set that because there's two of us?
Oh,
It-
yeah.
All
set
right,
it.
so do we agree that we should set it out as an action item?
Yes.
Yes.
We could just do it,
There's two.
advertise as
We're
a fee
done.
schedule adjustment like we usually do.
And if
Okay,
we
That
can't
works.
come
And
to
in
an
the end, if
agreement,
you
then it
decide
gets
not to do
tabled.
it, you can not do it.
I mean, that's already a truth and taxation meeting, so the meeting is noticed. We just have to, but yeah, let's talk about the fee
so
specifically.
the
We have to
answer
notice
is
it
yes,
separately.
we're gonna notice this for an action item. We've agreed to that. Thank you, Robert, very much. Item E1, application to rezone property located at approximately 2376 West Antelope Drive for general commercial to planned residential. Noah, what do you have to begin this with?
Okay. Good evening, council.
No.
I'm gonna just share my screen.
I guess I should ask, is there anything you have to add? Before
Above,
we begin
New.
this?
We
above
know
the
that.
packet.
Something that we don't already know.
I'll try to be as quick as possible. So last time we left off, if you remember, I'll pull up the plan on the screen here. There were some units right here in the play field.
Right.
And remember, that was for the general plan. So we approved the general plan. Now they're moving on to the rezone. So they've removed those units from the play field. They've gone through planning commission. Planning commission is recommending approval. There's a draft development agreement in the packet. The only, I mean, we're starting to get into the fine details now. The only things that are still floating around are like what kind of fencing is going to be around.
Which I don't think is to hold up the development agreement, but I think that road connection is not being shown at this time. It shows where it's gonna happen, but is this going to
Where's the
go
parking
into our
lot?
parking lot?
Yeah,
But
Yeah.
it's,
That's what we asked them to do.
They did add the road connection as you asked right there.
Yep.
And then.
okay, so
they come
that
off
is
of
our
the-
part, I misread the map then, because that's.
It's rotated. I should have mentioned
yeah, so
that.
right here, the movie theater
I
is right
see
here.
that, yeah.
goes down behind, and I requested that this road have a jog to it, but I don't want it as a straight shot right behind, right by a park. So I requested that
Not a
they.
very long road, though.
Still, originally they had a jog in the road, just a slight curve. I thought that was a good addition for, especially going by a park. I would still like to see that jog in the road just for some speed.
Okay, so I'm concerned because the other thing that would take care of that is we talked about whether they should have a 90-degree at that point to go into the actual public parking and not the park parking, because that's more open.
But it's all connected through cross easement,
It is, that's a
All of
good
it is.
point,
especially out to any part of that.
which is less risky, I guess, because we don't want people
We wanted,
exiting quickly
I
into
wanna-
where kids are.
My vote was a jog in the road, and I also want to make sure we have lots of visual friction, which means they need to, in that last drawing, all of the trees have been removed from the field.
That's not
That's a
required.
civil drawing. They will still have
Yeah.
lots of trees.
Yeah.
There's no
because-
landscape
Let me show
drawing
you.
of this.
The two things that will
There you
slow people down the most is going to be foliage along the roadway, as well as a jog in the road. And I'd like to see that added in.
But that's not more than 500 feet, is it?
No.
So they can't really, I mean, you have to really work at it to get up to speed. And
Agreed.
Just-
This was going right by a park.
I understand. I'm just saying that
it's
The
cumulative.
original plan had it in and they took it out. And I'm just saying, put it back the way it was.
Yeah, I think I am hearing what you're saying is you're concerned about traffic
Yes.
speeds. And
The parking lot's much longer.
if you look at this one, you can kind of get a better idea of, so you're talking about a driveway that comes through here.
Yep.
And this is where their connection
I
is.
see. Okay.
And there'd be just be a
Okay.
gentle jog
So,
there.
so, yeah, Jordan's
At the
requesting
end
a
of it
jog
is
there.
Just a
Before
jog
you
there.
enter in, I see.
The
So
main
with it-
entrance will be right off of the roundabout.
So
right
with
here.
it, the question is,
Makes
you know,
sense.
how do we jog to the left or the right?
Right.
Okay, that's fine.
I think.
I
I
think
mean,
the
not-
jog
I mean, I
would be-
don't-
It would make the courtyard a little bit wider. which
It's
is
not
kinda
exactly
nice.
easy to just add a jog. Maybe the applicant
Well,
can speak to that. We're kind of doing some civil engineering on the fly here.
well, so it was already there. So I
But it was
guess-
there because the buildings had moved.
No, it was there before
It
that.
was there before.
So you would propose to
The building's big
move
once we
this
added the
road to the south a little bit
cross-access.
so that there's a jog,
Fine.
which would
If-
reduce the
I
playfield
don't,
size.
yeah, not keen
Or
on that.
they have a little bit of room on the north, but then that's gonna reduce the rear setback between these units. So you can pick your poison,
My preference would be jog to the right.
take from the playfield. Well,
Just-
Okay, and nobody
can-
would notice.
So
that's
is
for
that
sure.
parking
I
lot a
think
straight
it's-
shot, or is there
Yeah.
also a little island that comes out of grass?
Straight
it's
shot.
straight here, let me.
You know, couldn't you do the same thing by putting a speed bump or something?
We don't do
We
speed
don't do
bumps.
speed bumps.
Hey,
like city
but you
roads.
are going into a parking lot, right? It would be an HOA, so it's not like a main road that we would have our normal snow removal trucks going on.
It's-
It
That
would
is
be
that is a city road.
Well, but
If
it,
it's a city road, it would,
going into this subdivision is?
yeah.
Maybe I
Is
could
it-
suggest some
is
other
that
traffic calming
1650
measures
south?
besides a jog that would still from the open space, there
These
are
are not private drives.
lots of traffic
Such
calming
as,
things like speed bumps.
no,
or-
we don't like speed bumps.
Well, we don't like them when they're in city streets, but these are private streets.
That's
that
what I
we
Well,
thought,
don't
what-
this is a private street.
Okay, so which is it? Wait a
I think
minute.
private drives are.
Because this
the-
is
It's
private.
Maintaining them
So
as
this is
an
main,
HOA.
We
Yeah,
haven't answered the question.
so we don't maintain this road.
So we don't have a
Nope.
big
We don't
truck
plow.
coming through to plow
Nope.
it, no,
No, it
it's
says that the
probably
HOA
gonna just be
maintains
a,
maintenance.
Private street,
which
private
means
street.
it's just a regular truck with a scooper on, that tends to be what you
Okay,
do.
so I
And
would
we've got one, and I
prefer,
hate it, but hey, it works.
okay, so I would prefer a speed bump to losing parkland.
I would too.
But this is parkland that isn't, I mean.
It's not our parkland, but
Right.
again,
But it's
green
still-
space is green space. We
I
like
mean,
it.
we'd rather have
Agreed.
green space than have more road. And I think that a solution, especially that doesn't cause grief to them trying to re-engineer this, would just be slow them down with something, and that would be that, right?
Well, and if
Or
we
have a
remember, I don't
bar
think that
at
they
the gate.
wanted this necessarily there.
No, they
anyway,
didn't,
so
but we
we're
want a
asking for
second
it.
exit because we're worried
Yeah.
about safety.
Yep.
And
Now,
Now we're
that's most
creating
important.
safety.
Safety.
Now we've got-
so is there a
Sorry.
sidewalk on either side of that road?
That was a good cackle.
I'll show you where the sidewalks are.
This is something I didn't notice when we were going in.
That's
I
okay.
noticed there was a sidewalk on the
There's-
east side.
There's only a sidewalk on one side of these private drives.
So there is no sidewalk to let them go to the park? That
No,
seems
no,
like an
no.
oversight, but that's up to them.
Yeah, it'd be preferred to have that, but these are private streets and
Sure.
there's 32 homes on it, so I think traffic will be pretty minimal here, but
Well, now I'm where they're gonna be walking in the road to go to the park.
they would probably walk through the road and funnel onto this sidewalk.
Then where?
And
And
into the
cross
park.
that
And then go
side.
through the
Oh, you're
roundabout?
talking about our park.
Our park.
Oh,
Oh,
that walks, yeah, that walks straight into the
So-
park.
Yeah, let's go right over the little.
In this-
They're gonna jump
They
the
would
line
put
of
a
fence.
Like over the fence.
in
Yeah.
this vinyl fence, that is one of
Hey,
the
that's-
comment
We'll
items.
have
We're all
this
okay
little
with
area
that.
lined with-
Isn't it
It's
just
a-
a
it's a
slat
two-rail-
fence, two
two-rail.
rails?
Noah's
Yeah.
Noah's
So
gonna
we
tell
don't-
us about it.
We don't want them to have to jump a fence. That doesn't make sense.
All right, I just
So-
wanted to make sure that was clear.
What?
Why can't we have an opening in the fence then?
I agree. They need
A
one.
You guys are so
pedestrian
smart.
opening.
Just put an opening in.
You can always put a pole in there.
Yeah, you got it.
It's not that hard to. keep
So,
the
yeah,
old-
no-
He's trying to get to that.
yeah, if you guys would let me talk, I'll tell you that there's an opening in the fence. So,
That's all.
yeah, so they're right next to the park and they'll be, if you can imagine that,
I can
There'll be a
imagine that
fence
helps
right
them
there.
sell the property, so.
probably, yeah.
You're not sharing that screen.
I am not sharing this aerial.
It looks the same as it did before.
Okay, thank you,
So good.
Brody. There you go. So you can see the driveway is straight. And then they're gonna have their development right there. And then they'll have a 2-rail fence. And they'll have an opening at the end of that drive aisle.
Kill the
Okay.
two-row
And then, yeah, it's just kind of grassy between there. One of the items that the planning commission recommended is they add some 2-rail fence along between this roundabout and their play space, play field, just for traffic safety, just to keep the kids away from the road, because that will be commercial traffic if you're going into that, which I think that,
I don't want to speak for the applicant, but I think the trails are probably-
okay, the applicant's here. If you feel like it's
I'd
So
the
you
like
time
have
to
questions
ask
from
them.
you? Okay.
Go
Go
Do you have
ahead,
additional information you want to add?
if it's additional.
Yeah, we hate speed bumps too, so. No, I think Noah's been wonderful to work with, and go back and forth on what makes sense. On the traffic, if you look at that, there's only 200 feet once you turn. And if you look also at the plat, there's only, it doesn't make sense for people to drive through the HOA. They probably don't even know it's there. They're gonna go a different direction. So you're only talking about really those 5 units that are gonna be using that. And so it's really, really minimal traffic. It's only 200 feet. There's plenty of view. I love the open space on the front for the amount of units that's there. And I'd really hate to chew that up I just don't think it's a safety hazard based on the minimal amount
Okay,
of feet.
so-
That's my opinion.
Okay,
So we could, I think we're agreed at that point
I can,
because.
I can accept that.
And seriously, I think that too, when you think about the street that it's going to, which is
Yeah.
gonna be down to Antelope,
pushing
they're not gonna wanna
south
go
now.
out through this and then through the parking lot, because it would be easier to just go to the roundabout and go straight to where there is a connection to Antelope, so.
Unless they're
I
pushing to
I
the
can get
light
behind
on
that.
2500.
Just make sure that we are,
2500 is an easier access.
Yeah, there'll be a light
Okay.
there, right? So
I can get
there is
get
gonna be
behind
some
that.
Oh, is there
push to
a
go to the
light
light.
there?
Yeah.
That will be awesome.
There will be a
Because it's
new
really
light
hard
there.
to go left
Depends
there.
if you're going north.
And also.
Yeah,
there is
yeah.
a-
If you're heading to,
Yeah.
if you're heading to the highway, you're probably.
Okay,
straight out
so-
to
So no one's gonna be going to Antelope anymore.
Okay.
They're
No,
gonna be going down. So this actually is the main egress.
Well, if you're going
At that
west,
point.
depends on
To
which
the
way.
highway.
If you're going west, you'll
You wanna go right out.
you want to go right to Antelope.
That's true.
Most likely they're going to change that whole intersection.
If you're going to
with
city
the
center, you're
island
probably gonna
mall.
head actually
So
back,
we'll
like,
see
we
what
go the other way.
happens.
and head
All right,
So
I'm good.
are there any
You're good.
other questions we have for the applicant?
No.
Okay, I think we're resolved on this. So this will go on to the next meeting for decision.
Thank you, thank you.
Next one, continued discussion, proposed amendment to development agreement for Holt mixed-use development project located approximately 1283 west, 1700 south.
Fill those up sometimes. 'Cause they're supposed to be in the packet, yeah.
They are in the packet, I believe.
What's wrong?
I
Oh,
got a
just-
question here about the elevations from the previous item. don't know
Yeah,
if you want
just
me to
the side units.
go
yes,
backwards
They
here.
weren't in the packet. At least not
I saw
my
them.
packet. You can show me yours.
Okay,
I saw
that's
front,
interesting.
I'm looking at it.
Did-
I've
is
got them
there an
on
updated-
garages.
I have
Was
that.
there an updated packet? Because
No,
No,
that's,
I
that's
have
the one I've got.
no pictures.
that's
How
the
many
one
total
I
pages do you
got.
have?
You don't
How
have,
many total pages? That's 154.
Yeah, that's what I got.
And I have
So for
none.
some strange reason, you didn't get them.
That is weird.
Where?
Okay, disappeared. You got the right page.
Because that's what I got.
See, look on the screen.
is that, is yours the one that I sent you?
No,
Or you found it somewhere else?
Cassie sent me a
Okay.
one.
Now
yeah,
I've
'cause I-
seen them. I'm glad to see windows and decoration.
You feel
Thank
good
you.
about it?
I'm good. It's not applicable. Thank you. That's
Yes.
very
Okay,
nice
so
to
can
know.
we move on?
Yes.
That's, okay, we're on to discussion. The whole development property.
Okay, so this is the development agreement for the entire Holt project. So the whole project, as you remember, has townhomes, it has apartments, and a commercial portion. In exchange for some of the density, we required a commercial component. And so they were making good on their promise and applied for a site plan to build the commercial component, but ran into a few issues in being able to meet our ordinance with their proposal. In the packet, I go through all of the different iterations and things like that. We don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but I thought it'd be useful to show. This is kind of what we thought we were getting. But then when they applied, this was what they proposed. But square footage wise, it's the same because there's actually two of those buildings. They just look a little differently. And so to meet the ordinance, we said, well, you got to have some sort of corner feature. So they added that. And then we said, well, you have to have, well, this is just based off of analysis, a strict interpretation of the ordinance. So they added some of that, some
Dormers.
of the dormers and the variation there. They changed the roof, and then they kind of added the second story thing. So they were meeting the ordinance there, but then there's the second. There was the second building.
Second building.
Yeah, and then that was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. And so he's like, well, I really just want to build this. Is there another way forward? And so the planning commission looked at the potential of amending the MXD ordinance. And then they ultimately were a little worried about the applicability of all future MXDs. And so the next route would be to look at the development agreement. So here we are. So because it's what I would call kind of like a heavy development agreement where we know that it doesn't meet the ordinance, we had to take the development agreement through the same process as we would for an ordinance amendment. So we had a public hearing with planning commission, just like we would with an ordinance, and they provided a recommendation for approval with this one.
With that drawing right there?
Nope.
No.
Okay, that's what I thought. I thought I
Got a
saw something
tower
different in the
feature.
packet.
Yeah, so what the applicant's interpretation of his correspondence with you. And
I haven't
we
seen
got
that.
representation here. I was looking for Josh, but we have Doug here. This is kind of where he landed, still doing the corner feature. So planning commission reviewed this. They were okay with it. They're recommending approval.
So this has the look of 2 stories, but it's not actually 2 stories.
Upper
just
areas, either
mechanical.
storage or a skyline.
Yeah. I think this is probably a big tall anything.
Well, upper storages do have some purpose. I mean, if you take your mechanical, you give yourself more square
It
footage.
just saves them from having to put in an elevator for ADA,
I
which
agree.
is
I'm o-
what kills most projects.
And
Okay,
also
so-
everybody wanted the main floor for an office if they were going to, or. a
So
The market
I
demand
want
was
to, I just want to revise where we're at this point so that we narrow our discussion to the subject at hand. This has been voted to allow a zone change. So with the zone change, there is entitlement to this development. So at this, I'm correct, right? You're nodding yes in the first.
Yeah, yes, that's
Okay.
a good point.
So
We're
it-
not,
At this
the rest of the
point,
development's going
moving
forward.
well, that's why I'm
regardless of what we're
clarifying.
This is
So,
about.
okay, that's why I'm clarifying. So at this point, there is no option to vote yes or no to the development. I just made, putting that on the table. We are all aware.
Yeah.
What we're agreeing to at this point
The nuances.
is
of
the
what-
nuances of the development agreement, which is, does this meet the code that we have, or does this not meet the code that we have? And you're suggesting that if it doesn't, the options are, which I think we kind of concluded, you've said it does not. So if it does not, we can either put it in as an amendment to the, or not an amendment, but as a clarification using the development agreement,
Mhm.
or we can change the zone. That's the first item for discussion.
And we had talked about this instead, we were comfortable with the development
We didn't
change.
want to
And
dig
then-
into the zone.
We don't wanna get
and
into
Yeah.
And it's
rewrite
also
the
the
MXD.
fact too, that it was the appearance that we wanted more than anything.
Okay, so what I'm trying to do is narrow what we're, our focus. So if we're concluded, then that the agreement was that we're not going to change the zone for this, then I'm just narrowing the discussion to,
Are we okay
are
with
we okay
this?
with this in the
modifying?
development agreement, or do we need to
Very
develop?
narrow focus here.
Or
yeah.
do we need to focus on another way to address the development agreement? So that's, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah, this-
characterize this so we don't go back to places we've
Sure,
already
yeah.
been.
That's good. This is a legal way forward. Um, And yeah, if everybody's in accordance here, this works.
So that's the discussion. Does this work for you guys? I mean,
So for me, it does. I'm ready to move forward with this. I think we've seen so many different iterations of it, and it's very clear there's market demand for this. And I think we kind of owe our citizens the opportunity to have this commercial development move forward. So that's where I'm at.
And I also think that it meets the intent of the two-story appearance, because that's what we're looking for, is the aesthetic, the appearance of it, right? Nobody was like, oh, we've got to have stairs in the middle of the store.
no, I don't think that stairs were mandatory. I think that
It's about stairs taking up square footage,
Yeah.
it's about elevators taking
Yeah.
up.
For
I think
us-
it's about usable square
For
footage.
us,
of
our focus has
commercial.
always
That's
been
what I'm talking
usable
about.
space
Usable
that someone
space.
could come in and
Right.
create a business in
Not elevators,
Syracuse.
not stairwells.
Agreed.
Exactly,
Yeah, I could probably expand on the two-story thing, why it was there. I
yes.
think we were trying to maximize the amount of commercial that we had for
Right.
property tax purposes and the amount of businesses. But this development is offering the same amount of square feet, even I think. a
Yeah.
little
It's
bit
slightly
It's
more.
more,
Yeah,
But so
my,
it comes down to.
my
an
goal is
appearance
usable
thing.
commercial space, and
And I think
this,
useful is your adjective that's so important, because
yes,
I think most businesses, 99% of them that I can think of, would want ground level
Yeah.
and wouldn't want to have to pay for the upkeep
Yeah.
of an elevator as well. And a stairwell does take out a lot of your square footage.
Agreed.
the floor plans confuse me, but I know those are sample only. So I'm sure that some of this will be,
Well, they're built.
And they
we'll
can
build a
also-
suit.
and they can have
So-
larger than just one unit. They have
Mhm.
two.
Right,
Take
and
out
so
the
that's
wall.
where, those are the big things that give me pause, because right now, that silo is a executive office.
Yeah, which I think is a poor use of
Me
space.
too,
but-
it's- but
but
that,
the
I'm not gonna
renter
get hung up on
chooses-
that.
The renter chooses how that
Yes.
works,
Not
not,
the purchaser.
yeah.
Yeah.
You wanna have a little
The-
braid
I
hanging out the
think
top window?
Rapunzel's gonna be living up there. It's a perfect place for
But the nice
parties.
thing is
Parties.
it is a location to easily explain where you.
Yeah, that's what I like, it's a landmark,
Yeah,
and that,
it really
anytime you
is.
have a landmark, say, hey, you can
Yeah.
find us at the silo in
Right.
Syracuse, and people are like, oh, no, that is.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah, the other reason for the two-story thing is for the street presence. And
Yes.
so he was,
That's
with the
what-
dormers, he was
The
trying to say, but if you, the planning commission is almost there, but they're looking at the wall heights and the fact that it's a gabled roof and those dormers are actually pushed back from the road a little bit. So I think, you know, the where they left off was probably the closest in conformance with the intent of the code with this, you know, this little piece, but that created problems with the stairway
Okay,
and all
so
that.
I'm hearing
doing it
consensus
twice.
that
What?
this
And doing
works
it
on the
twice.
street side.
Well,
Now,
if-
my second question that you brought up that I think is still unresolved is, are we accepting that the second building that is not facing Antelope or along Antelope, is it okay if that doesn't have the same appearance?
Well, if it has
The
the
difference would be
dormers,
the
no silo.
silo.
And it
Right.
has the
Which I
dormers,
think
which
two
still-
silos would
I
look
think you can't,
ridiculous.
yeah, you
And,
can't
and the
double that
dormers
up.
suggest
I don't know
a
how many
second
barns don't
story.
have two silos if they're in effect, but I'm not, I mean, so it looks ridiculous.
gonna
I don't know.
do,
Every farm I've been on had two, but
So this is the second, yeah, this is the second,
but I'm not saying
Building.
that that's what we need.
But the
What
second
they're
building
proposing.
having
It seems
the
like from an
dormers
architectural standpoint,
suggests,
most of these ones have one silo. And
Right.
the one right by Cherry Hill, that's got a nice big silo right on the corner.
those are
Okay,
nice.
so the
Yeah,
point
we've seen
is-
them.
Does it matter, council, that the second building is not the same as
Did-
the first
I
street
don't think it
silo?
does, because it has the dormers,
Okay.
which also suggests a second story.
Any other
That's where I'm
different,
at, yeah.
differing thought?
I'm good with that.
Okay.
What are your
Where are you
thoughts?
at? Yeah.
Just,
We're not
well,
there.
I mean,
Well, we have consensus, don't we? You know?
Well, no,
We
I
do.
want to hear his thoughts though.
no, I mean, I'm not in love with the concept, but it's to fight for like another silo or another second story look isn't going to give us any more square footage, and that's the purpose.
That's the
So
idea.
if that's the amount of the argument there, then so serve no purpose.
It's congruent with the rest of the development, which is
Yep.
what we asked.
Okay,
That's why
so-
I'm willing to go along with it.
So I'm going to suggest that we are agreed to the point that this could go to a vote on the next meeting, but I would not suggest
Consent.
consent. I would say that it's just going to go to the next meeting for a vote. Is everybody okay with that?
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay,
Continued discussion application rezone property located approximately 817 west, 1700 south from mixed-use residential to mixed-use general commercial.
So I guess my thing on this one, sorry if I'm gonna go, is
Ahead of
this
the-
zone mixed use? It was conditionally mixed use
Mhm.
with that last development agreement, but that's been thrown out. So I would
Actually-
argue this is
actually,
not
according
mixed
to the city,
use.
It has not
Yeah, so I would say this is still
mixed use, period.
agricultural.
Ag-
No, it's been zoned mixed use. It was voted
The
and we
general plan would
approved,
be-
and it is mixed use.
It was
as
conditional
of right
mixed
now.
use for that.
For that development, yes.
Okay, so
I guess
I
that-
hear
that-
what
this is
Jordan's saying,
nuance.
and
But
this
here's
is-
here's the other thing though, too, that's interesting is that we all wanted less density, right? Or not we all, but you know, that's what the complaint
Yes.
was
The
of the
general consensus
neighbors,
of the neighbors.
Right.
is-
right? And they have complied.
No, I agree. I'm just talking
Okay, so.
for
the-
nuance. Technically, it was only mixed use under the condition of that development agreement. Is that accurate?
yes,
So
okay,
this is
so
technically
you're-
still A1.
yes.
Well, if we
So
they
we
could build the other one. That's
So
the
we could
point.
just
Could they?
switch it
Yes,
to,
because the
Yeah,
other,
we got
the
approval.
neighbors came into agreement with the
Okay.
developer, not with the city.
Like they can build the previously approved plan.
Right.
Today.
All I'm saying is, for the sake of what it says on this paper, it's technically still A1 because this is not the develop, it was conditional on that previous development agreement.
This is a weird one. I mean, it's not very traditional that you kind of have this limbo period, but yeah, if they. wanted
It's
to do
nuanced. I'm
another
not
one-
saying we're doing anything different. I'm just saying
No, I
technically
agree.
it's
So-
A1 to
No,
mixed
Alright.
use.
technically, it's the other plan
Could-
for this one.
I'd be happy
I
to
agree.
kind of
Well, no,
walk us
let's-
through.
let's-
But
this
anyway,
item.
nuance, let's continue on.
Let's address Jordan's point here and ask the attorney, okay? So the question that Jordan, I think, if I'm hearing you correctly, is asking is, are we going to redefine this as a new project? I mean, are we gonna have to start over because the one that was approved was the old one? And we haven't approved something different. So Can we actually, I think what you're saying is, can we actually go forward without taking a step back?
Well, here's the question.
We've
was it
already
all-
gone, we've already taken that step back. So this
Yes.
has been introduced as a new proposal. It's gone through the planning commission, through the public
Okay.
hearing process, so we don't have to send it back again. It's already gone through that
Okay.
process. It's as if it's a brand new application.
So for the sake of this action item, it
It
is,
should be
it should be listed as A1 to mixed use
Okay,
commercial.
so let's put that aside because that we can just reword at the time that goes through.
it's a slow
Is there
stretch.
any?
The lawyer just said he agrees.
Okay.
I would say it's complicated, and this is why I wouldn't recommend ever approving anything when the development agreement is up in the air. That's why we
Yeah,
stopped approving
good
it.
call.
Yeah, so no matter the rush from any side, I would just say we need to make sure these things are set in stone before we get. to
Okay,
the
so
approval stage.
the question is, then what are we approving as the development agreement, right? Because this is a new application to
It is.
use the same zone that was approved, but in a new format.
Right.
So
So this is still a rezone application.
this is still a rezone application.
Yes.
That doesn't meet the MXD.
That does not
Yeah.
meet the MXC.
I bet Noah's
standard.
ready to
But
tell
here's
us about.
another question along with this.
I would love to
though.
tell you all about it.
Here's, in a minute,
You let me.
when
Okay,
you, when
I'll-
we want,
At some
Whatever.
point.
the point
Whatever
is
you- I'm
that
here to help.
the question is here is that we have talked about this in other places where it could be zoned, say, like R3, and they built R2. Remember that? Okay. Do we have a problem with people building less than what's been approved for?
No, of course not.
So then that's the question here.
Right. The only problem is,
Well,
it,
is
since this is a new development, the
But-
MXD did not. pass
Okay,
it.
so
but
I
if we
think
go-
I agree where you're going with that. We don't have a problem with people building below the
Down
actual
zoning.
density.
That's what I'm talking
The
about.
question really is the new application fit the MXD? And if that's the question, it doesn't.
I think it says in the.
It-
packet
it
that there's
does
options to go
Under
with it.
the condition of off-site commercial.
All right,
Which is what
Noah,
Noah's going to tell us.
let's talk about, Noah, let's let you go to the options here.
Okay, I'll see if we can.
We
get
read
us-
them, so we don't have to like.
I know
review.
this is a complicated issue and I understand why there's question. Hopefully I can get us untangled. Okay, so this is a rezone. Current zoning is A1, proposed zoning is MXD. Where we left off last time, remember I brought up some issues that I had with getting to the end result by utilizing the MXD zone. And so I created a table.
Which we
Everybody
read,
loves tables. Maybe this will help. I can go
5
through-
items.
I can go through. I'm seeing,
We've
Okay,
read it.
but we did read it, so don't reread it.
Yes, we've read it.
I'm not gonna reread the table.
Okay.
Let me see. My point is, there's multiple ways to get to the end result,
That's fine.
okay?
And
it's
as I
up to you
understand
guys.
the way that you've presented it to us in the packet, the question is what effect does getting there in each way have on the future of the city in this zone?
I would love to present that to you.
Okay, well, no, I'm saying that's the question. That's why we're,
I love you guys.
I'm trying to focus the question so that we just don't spend all of our time
Yeah,
on things that we did agree to.
I'm not, yeah. Okay. Can I go through the options?
Yes,
quickly?
please.
Option number 1, build previously approved MXD plan. This is more high density. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this one. Option number 2, build the project entirely in the MXD zone. So this is what we would call using the off-site loophole option. Okay, so that the ordinance
Which
says.
isn't really offsite.
So the ordinance says that you may count your required commercial for off-site, partner with the property owner. So that makes me assume that when we were writing that, we intended it to be a different property owner and a different parcel. This is the same property owner on the same parcel.
Mhm.
Regardless, if they were to say, okay, well, the whole thing's MXD, then that means that that commercial building would have to meet all of the standards in the MXD zone. So the MXD zone, if you see this real low red line, they're so close with it already. The difference would be that they'd have to have a sidewalk that goes to some front doors right here. That would be the only difference. All of the residential, all the same, as far as the site plan.
But we say that that door has to be functional, even though that may or may not be their kitchen.
So,
But there's
I'm
several
just-
tenants.
So we don't have to, I'm not lobbying for any of
right,
these.
I
choices.
understand.
I
But I'm
think
just gonna
that's-
stop
he's
this
giving
here
us
for a
the-
second, and I want to interject this. My concern about that is that this shows a very clear example of how that's not practical. That we actually are less safe because of the way this zone is written. So we can't rewrite this zone for this application, but I'm going to suggest maybe we need to look at this in a future meeting, and that is not the current discussion. I'm just saying we should look at that because we're getting something that isn't, that complies but doesn't meet the safety concerns that we have.
Well,
I have talked to, go ahead.
I would argue that you can do that in a safe way. This is one consolidated crossing. They could have stamped concrete, their drive aisles, and actually having an entryway that faces north against Antelope gives a better street presence and adds more friction and actually.
But
We hope we'll
it's
slow
a
down traffic.
drive-through. You're not going to see that street presence is what I'm arguing. So you're saying that we see doors and it looks different. But like we see doors against Antelope over here in the shopping center, that nobody uses that side of the door.
I'm gonna talk about that more in our town center discussion. Cause
Okay.
I tried walking in there.
Yeah,
And I found walking interior along the gins and everything, like I'll talk about this more. I found that better than walking along Antelope,
right.
because I felt
More
Safer.
protected.
safer, quieter. I
It's
found it
more
a
an
more
inviting
pleasant
presence, yeah.
experience. Because walking along Antelope has never been my,
Okay,
never been an
so,
idea of an
That's
ideal
where the
stroll.
employees
so
go to
because
school.
we're not changing that tonight, I just wanted to
Right.
throw out
It's
that
where we
probably
do
we
it.
need to change that in the future.
We
But
should
go
look
on.
at it. And yeah, we could get really off topic here.
So go on to the
Uh,
next.
But I will just point out
Okay.
that sometimes what you see driving by also gives the image of a certain perception of whether or not.
I think you're just gonna see a bunch of minivans, but.
Okay, so this, if we wanted to use this option, they would have to modify the facades so that what you see from the street would be doors.
Right, okay.
Okay. Option number 2.
So wouldn't that require 3 or 4 crosswalks across the?
They're
You
saying
say one
consolidated.
central.
Oh,
You
so-
could
okay, that's
consolidate.
right. You
You
did-
have
you
a
did say that.
sidewalk along
And it's
that,
maybe raised.
which I like even less, because people walking along the drive or the drive-through aisle parking isn't good.
Well,
I have some pictures if
Probably
you
would
want
be a
me to,
sidewalk.
it goes along with the
Well, yeah,
town
but
center
a sidewalk
conversation,
next to
but-
where your cars are.
I think it's worthwhile to show, at least show the pictures, because I'm sure there are people out on
Okay, let me show the pictures.
the interwebs.
Okay, so along with this conversation is what we've talked about is the traditional development
we agree, we
pattern.
don't want that.
This is Roy. Uh,
Poor Roy.
Poor Roy. Okay, this is this is really what we have in front of us.
And I
This is
like,
Clinton. If we like this, move forward. We don't have to debate it. But I guess the downfall of this is that you do get some of these back of house kinds of things, gas meters,
Right.
doors, garbage
Some landscape
sometimes.
screening, like,
But we
But you
talked
can
last
put-
time that we could require that to be covered.
Which,
Yeah, we
could
do
that's what they're
landscaping and
doing
stuff.
Yeah,
in, you know, with landscaping, but we could do it a little
we
bit
could
more.
do it with some kind of screening there.
Yeah, maybe you can do a little bit better, but they have some, look, they have some nice kind of architectural features and a trellis.
And I've never driven by that and be like, oh, that's ugly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they're watery.
I
too
pull
much.
in there.
But it's good, better.
You're so judgmental.
I'm just saying.
actually, I've got several trees dying in there.
All right, we're gonna get off track. Keep going.
So
though.
I'm doing my job, and I'm trying to go to bat for the city to get the absolute best.
Right.
Okay,
Good,
go ahead.
better, best. So maybe this is good and everybody's happy with it. You know, and this is a main street in Heber.
Are you calling this better?
This is better. This has the doors that face the street.
They don't have a drive.
And this is where I say that we aren't that on that corner.
Yeah.
So if we're not that, then
Yeah.
We are,
That-
we
this
are in
is-
the city.
This is town center.
Yeah, town center,
Yeah.
yes, but where this is, we're not that.
so, and really, what the mixed use ordinance is designed around is this
Is it?
vision. So if this
You guys
isn't
want
what we
vertical.
want on these peripheral sites, we shouldn't use the mixed use zone on all these peripheral sites out of context of what it was
Which
designed
seems
to
like
use
the
for.
table might be one of the next
Yes.
options. Okay.
Let's. Good segue, Seth.
Segway, Seth.
That was
So-
beautiful.
So good, better, best. I mean, this is vertical, this is horizontal, but it does have entry on both sides. And so
Mhm.
we could do something similar with the bigger setback that I think would look really nice. But again, I'm here to go along with, really the rubber's hitting the road here and I want
This is
to
lovely.
help
And they have a
facilitate.
petition
Yeah.
UDOT, right, to
Yeah.
slow it down there as well.
Heber worked with UDOT to slow the speeds down.
Go.
Okay, so we were on option 2.
Very few places.
Okay,
Let me show you option 3. Build general commercial zone in the front, no changes required. Back is current PRD. So current PRD would only allow 9 units per acre back here. So they would have to eliminate, I wrote it down in the table.
Everything in the middle.
They have to eliminate like 20 units. So I'm sure that's not a popular item with,
well, I don't think that's even gonna be acceptable to the current, so.
I don't think it would pencil.
At that point, you just lost all your commercial because they're gonna say,
We're
Well,
not coming here with.
we
Yeah,
have another
19
site that was on the agenda tonight that's doing this. And they're okay with it, but maybe it's different.
but they're not building a big commercial component.
Exactly.
No, but they
They're
are
just
leaving a
building
pad.
condos.
Yep. Yeah, they are leaving a pad. that will
And
probably
and our
go
goal
for-
here was
On a
bring,
lot
Okay,
that
so-
will cost
And
this
we
cost.
want to
So,
help Smith.
I think you
All
just
your
got feedback that
businesses
that one
there
doesn't
too.
fit, so.
Yes, let's
And
keep moving.
State
Let's go to
chapter
option
2.
4.
Option 1 and 4.
Or
1 and 3.
whatever it is.
All right. So the residential is the same. Option 4, build a general commercial zone in front, back is amended PRD. No changes to the plan. That's another route to get to the end if we're fine with the way the plan is. And
Why,
then-
so why you say amended
Because
PRD?
it doesn't
Because it's
allow
not
for that
mixed.
much. at
No,
this
correct.
point.
So you
Okay,
have
so-
to amend the PRD or make an exception.
So currently, the PRD ordinance has the 3 categories, number 6, 9.
Okay, no, so where are you saying make an exception or
I'm saying
amend the
amend it.
PRD permanently?
Amend
You
it.
could do either.
Amend it, or
You,
I guess
okay, so either's an
You
option.
could do a development agreement, accepting them from the period, or you can amend the period.
Which is interesting because then every
Because-
developer. after
but
that-
which the development agreement would
But
be
it
part of the
doesn't mean we
MXD?
have to give up the.
or we can
No,
just do
PRD
mixed use with
PRD,
commercial in front as an offsite.
PRD with the
And
exception.
do the same.
Agreed.
See, I
This is why
worry
it's
about
like-
getting in the habit of accepting
What are we
all of
doing?
our ordinances through development agreement. Yeah, I don't know if that's a good,
So
it's better to
We've
have
kind
it.
of been there for a while.
We're starting to do it and I'm a little leery of it.
So my
Did we
preference-
say that that was gonna become a problem?
Yeah,
And it's kind of there?
we're on legal footing and things are working, but I would prefer, or I would recommend amending the PRD. And I think I have sent via email a recommendation for a way of amending this to make this possible that would be very minimal. You wouldn't be increasing the density categories. All you would be doing is taking an
You would,
existing
you'd be
qualification.
you'd be applying it more liberally so that more
You'd be
people
making
apply
12
to the
more.
maximum density. That's what we would be doing.
But
But then you
Yes,
could
but
allow for
you'll end up-
townhomes versus apartments.
if the goal is to get more townhomes versus apartments, allowing a broader use of the PRD versus MXD.
Well,
probably result.
that goal changes per council because it used to be the goal was to not have everything come in at maximum density
But this is what
and
you
make
wanted.
PRD harder.
But
Well,
This is what you wanted,
it's still a
right?
legislative decision,
So you have
so
to do
we
that.
could say.
Okay,
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
but
no,
that's
it's
not
always
the decision for tonight. The decision for tonight is what to do with this.
Yeah, so this is an option. If number 4 was desired, we would essentially put this on hold temporarily to
And
amend
go
the
back
And
PRD.
to
how
the
long would
PRD.
that hold be?
Be another
Well,
month.
it'd be a month or at least.
That's why I want to, we
Probably
need to
more
be
like 2
very
months, right?
careful on what time, we don't want to say, oh, and we'll amend this, it'll just take us 6 more months, you know? what I
Yeah,
mean?
we don't
That's
want
just
to
wrong.
kill the deal. We
No,
wanted to start.
clarify what the amendment for the PRD would be, because it really made sense that that would be reasonable.
I thought it would be a very attainable, easy, quick amendment.
12 units per acre more easily.
So if
It
you
would make
imagine,
everything 12 units per acre. isn't it?
Why are we not okay
No,
with
just
just
it's-
mixed
it would
use with
just-
offsite commercial with onsite?
uh,
I understand what I
that's,
just said.
that's the
but-
last,
And we're, in our,
that's the
in our
last
caveat
point.
was it had to be within.
Okay,
half
so
mile.
let's-
Yeah, and this is.
so
Okay,
if
so
you don't
let's go
want
to
to
the
do number 4,
option
we can go
5.
to option number 5, but let me just say, I think there might have been an unanswered question is what does that PRD amendment look like? So you would take, so there's qualifications for 6, 9, and 12.
And
You
you
would take
lessen that.
you would take one of them from 9, because the idea is it builds as it gets.
Yeah,
So you have a qualification if you're next to an existing commercial in the 9 units per acre, and you think that that would continue on to the 12 units an acre. So if it's good enough for 9, why wouldn't it be good enough for 12?
Right.
So
There
we
are some
could,
things
we could
that-
just take that and put it in there. So it would increase the number of sites throughout the city that 12 would be applicable, but not all of them. And so you're right, it would actually
everybody
increase
would end
the
up being a lot
potential
more dense.
applicability. But to get that zoning, you would still have an application and a legislative decision and a public hearing that the city does not have any obligation to rezone to PRD.
But
We've
what it
said that
doesn't
about a
require
lot
is
of-
commercial.
Yeah,
So it's just is way more straightforward. People are wanting to build this product and they're trying to use this MXD zone. I feel like it's a little bit out of context because we really envision this MXD zone as this town center thing. And we have all these strict architectural standards and everybody's saying, yeah, I want to use it for the density, but I don't like all these other things. And so it's
Taking
starting
some
to
parts
get
of it
a
and not-
little.
I'm just gonna say that I
It's
agree
creating a
with
problem.
you. We are misusing this zone, but we could have just said no. I mean, we could have just said, that's not what the vision of this zone was, and that was part of the argument. So, but that's passed, the decision was made.
But in the past, the other product did meet the MXD zone.
Yes.
So that's, what are you talking about?
That's the other
No,
question.
I'm
It was just
saying
because
that-
of public, that they had any.
The other one had
Well,
vertical mixed use.
And that was
I
with
think
And
we
it
have
had
to
all the
listen to our
MXD
public.
standards,
It's all
right?
of it.
I mean, if we're talking
Okay,
about meeting
we're-
MXD, that was it.
That's the question
might be
though,
the
is
intent.
that, what portion?
You know what I mean? And it
Okay,
was still-
what I'm saying is you're talking about, we have legislative power. We could say that's not what we envisioned with this zone. You can say technically it did, but whether it technically did or not, was that the vision of this? And,
For some it was, it sounds like.
okay,
Yeah.
'Cause
What I envision with this goal is people can build a higher density, but they have to have commercial with it. It's the trade. And this gets me exactly what I wanted. This is what I want. I wanted to trade a little bit of density, and this is fantastic. As far as compared to the previous product. And I get drive-throughs, which every person I talk to says they wish they had a drive-through. And this checks all of my boxes.
so I'm gonna agree that this is more appealing commercial, but like I voted previously, it's not enough commercial for me, but that's not the.
But it's the same amount of commercial as you were gonna get with apartment
If
buildings.
it's the zone that you approved, so if it meets.
I didn't approve, but
Oh, so you voted against it, the mixed use zoning for the amount of commercial. I'm pretty sure you were an aye vote on that.
no, I said at the time I wanted more commercial.
Okay, well then, did you vote yes or no? Do you know?
I don't even remember, but
See,
I voted
therefore,
against.
It's codified though. That is what they
It
had to
is?
meet and therefore they've met it. So that's not the subject.
So yeah, option,
Okay, well, the point is, at this point, or do you want to go to option 5?
I didn't mean to cut,
It's okay.
proceed
You
if you were
tried.
worried. I was just, I thought that we were ready to move to option 5.
I'd like to move there.
Let's hear option 5.
Okay. Didn't mean to cut anybody off there.
No, the
Well,
point is
we're
though, is
good at
that
that.
we all had, when we were making the mixed use zone, we went over it a lot.
We
And
did. It doesn't mean we agree.
Everybody said, we all voted for the entire thing. So whether
No,
or
we
not there were
didn't agree.
portions.
I think the challenge
I'd say
was,
there's
it
problems.
felt like we agreed, but then once we saw it in application.
We didn't
It looked
agree that
different,
that's what we thought we
know.
were
And that's a
getting.
possibility.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a
'cause I felt like
possibility.
we
And
were
if you
kind of-
don't like the zone, then you go back and fix the zone, but you don't move the goalpost while it's the zone that it is.
Yeah.
Well,
Anything done
neither
by
here nor there
committee
at
is-
this point.
is a
So we've
challenge.
directed,
Sure,
we directed
Sometimes do it,
discussion back to
sometimes-
what we're gonna do
Okay.
here.
I would like to go through 5. Noah, please.
Option 5 is another way of getting to the same end product of what we've talked about. There would be no changes needed. There would be a development agreement that would
Basically allow what's
essentially
there.
exempt them from the standards, which my worries is that this is not the last time we're gonna see people wanting to use this offsite exemption. And so if you look at the ordinance text, I have it here in the packet, but the ordinance says 100% residential projects are prohibited, and that the developer may partner with owners of offsite commercial projects to develop the required commercial square feet of the proposed project. So we would have to essentially be okay with that to be, if you guys are okay with it, just considering it to be offsite, we can interpret that, but in every application is a legislative decision. So if somebody tries this in the future and you don't want to
Still up
do
to
that, you could say no. It's not the end of the world.
Yep.
And so this probably is, option 5 probably is the fastest way to get to the finish line. My concern is that maybe it's not the right way to get to the same end result. But
From a long.
granted, I've laid it all out for you guys to consider. You can take whichever path you want. It's legal to do option 5. I'm just a little worried about the applicability of the MXD zone.
Okay, so we're way over time on this. So going back to the
Considering
question,
how complicated it was, I think we did pretty good.
Yeah.
well, okay, so considering that we are way over the allotted or suggested time, the question is, what does anybody propose to go forward with?
You had a pretty strong thought. What were you saying?
I'm in favor of option 5. I think, I still think that this is not our town center. We have a huge demand for drive-throughs, and this guarantees commercial with a higher density development. And I am okay with applying in the circumstance. I've said in the past, if this were closer to the town center, this wouldn't fly. So anyone that's thinking about doing that, I'll probably vote no. But where this is on the edge of our city, it does bring drive-throughs and meets a business need. I'm okay with.
Does anybody have a
moving forward
different
as 5.
opinion?
So question for you, are
Sure.
you saying only within the city center overlay?
I'm s-
Or how do you delineate, I guess with my question. is
Well, mixed
what-
use really only applies along Antelope and possibly along 193.
Yep.
So there's not really other places they
You
could
said
do
city
it.
center, so I didn't know if you-
But when I say city center, I meaning basically from near Antelope,
2000.
along Antelope between 2000, well, above 2000 and down past the movie theater.
There may possibly be in future ones where Davis quarters and place, you have a main
further
floor
in.
there as
Yeah.
well,
I'm assuming the
Okay.
town center is
Okay.
going to shift west.
but that's in the future.
Okay, so the question is, we have somebody who's argued for option 5. Is there anybody that feels differently?
I would say option 5 as well, because it's within a half a mile. That's my view on it.
Okay, so again, the question is there any different?
Well, I liked the
I had to-
concept of looking at our PRD requirements, because it is interesting that we, instead of building on and adding a next one, so you have this, and then you have this and this, and then you have this, this, and this. Instead, we removed one out of the equation for the last option for the higher density and gave them 2 new requirements. So it's basically, that doesn't really make sense to me. So I think that Noah had a good point to say, let's revisit the PRD and it kind of falls short on some reason.
So option 2 versus 5 really just preserves a little bit of the language of the MXD zone. Is that?
Yeah,
Is
so
that
option
kinda-
2 is build it entirely within the MXD zone, which means that they would have to modify
we'd have
their
to update the architecture
architecture to have some entrances that face north. And option 5, there is a little bit of, since we are just kind of doing the DA and allowing certain exceptions, there is some negotiating ability if we did want to see certain things on the
What is
building
DA?
facing.
Development.
Sorry,
Oh.
development agreement. If we did want to see certain things on that building, if, like I threw it out there with them, that maybe they design kind of, instead of having a door on every unit, maybe one of the units has a door that faces north as a compromise. So you still get some of that architecture as you're driving by that is more
Okay,
welcoming, but
so-
they weren't exactly.
so I'm going back to the question. is there enough support for one option? It sounds like option 5. If there was at least 2 votes for, because then you can move forward if there's enough votes for it to move forward under option 5.
Where are you?
I don't think that this meets the interpretation that I had of mixed use period. So I'm still
Option
Zero.
6.
I'm still this is not mixed use. I've said that from the beginning. I've never voted for this. And so I'm probably not going to again, because I don't feel like this is doing what we intended it to do. And now you can argue with what somebody else intended it to do. That's
Sure,
fine.
yeah.
It's not what
You
I
know,
thought I
what
was
mixed-
getting.
What we thought mixed use was going to be.
Yeah, this is not what I thought we were getting. from mixed use.
So would you,
But for this one, the ratio, sorry, I'll let you finish, Lisa. No.
I was just going to say, is this 2 separate developments to you then?
That's a good question. I mean, I can land here. I can say that the commercial works for me as commercial, so I don't have a problem with that as commercial. And the back part, I guess kind of work, well, except for the 3-story part, works for me for PRD. So yes, I could go along with this, but it doesn't meet the density for our current PRD. And I don't want to give that up, because I think once we do, everything will be.
Agreed,
Just a
that's why I
higher
don't want to
density.
change the PRD.
So I don't want to change the PRD. So yes, I could accept it as 2, but I couldn't accept the PRD as a PRD.
So the reason why I'm okay with 5 is because we're still getting the same amount of commercial that we were gonna get with apartment buildings.
Right.
And this is a huge win, in my opinion, compared to what we had, because we're
Okay.
getting a lot of commercial and not a ton of density, which is
Okay.
kind of where I've always wanted to get to. So the
Okay.
ratio is much better than it was even 6 months ago.
So I go back to the question. We've had 2 people
I'm
say
okay with
voice.
5.
Okay, so now that we've had 3 people say they're okay with 5, I think that we put this on the next agenda for a vote, because we have 3 consenting, but it wouldn't be consent or consensus.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
that's
sounds like you have a
resolved.
majority.
Just one small thing, so in our, we've mentioned the utility meters, and this came up in the negotiations with the DA. And we put in their language about architectural screening,
Yeah,
and they said, we don't want that, we want to have it painted. Does the council care if it's painted rather than
Painted
architecturally
the
screened?
same
Tell me,
color
please.
as.
It'd be,
the-
yeah, I mean, I don't know if.
What do you
Logan's
mean?
Like
gonna tell
blend
us
in
what
with
he
the
had in
wall,
mind.
gray walls, gray meters.
Yeah, we did, sometimes utility companies have issues if you have some physical.
okay,
issues,
let's
some
not recognize
landscaping.
somebody else.
Paul, I think the DA amendment that made it to the packet had painting and landscaping, or painting or landscaping. So we just were worried about if we were held to the architectural feature, and we hit a roadblock with utility company about putting physical features in front of the.
You know,
Totally
they need to
understand.
gas here when they.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
what
I'm
happens if
not
they do get that
opening.
roadblock and utilities come forward and say, that's a no-go? And we've
Okay,
got it in
so
the
that
EA.
is,
Where do we go from there? Is that?
so I'm going to suggest that when it comes to what's allowable and not with utility companies, the city's going to have to take part of that negotiation with what's allowable. I think this group can ask for something, but yeah, if it comes back and they say we're not going to allow it,
We have to.
we have to
adjust it
face up to what that is.
And change it.
And can we move forward without having to do any kind
You
of?
can
additional
require
units on that?
screening unless denied by the.
Okay, that would be the
So
language.
that-
At which
that
point
sounds
painting
like-
and landscaping would take over.
Okay, so I think we have a way to go forward with that too.
Yeah, that was just a finer point, I just wanted to make sure we had that.
Were there
resolved.
any other development agreement issues that anybody thought had to come forward?
So, 'cause they resolved
All right.
everything else we wanted.
Let's move on. Continued discussion, item E4, continued discussion of potential text amendment in Syracuse City Code 10-1 or .100 pertaining to Town Center Overlay Zone. Noah, start it with what isn't already written in the packet.
Well, let me summarize.
That's too much.
So it really comes down to the siding of buildings,
Okay,
siding of parking, and signage. So if this is where the rubber is hitting the road, we've done a lot of work visioning what our town center is. We heard from the community, what we think we heard with the general plan is that we want to create kind of like this really unique village center that's walkable. And to accomplish that, it really comes down to those three cornerstones of building design, of siding and the entrances, parking and signage. So if you look at those pictures that we showed of Roy, the building's far back, they've got a big sign. You know, I'm trying to summarize it the best I can. So this would be an ordinance amendment applicable only to the town center.
Okay, so I think, let me start by clarifying where we are. At this point, we do not have a town center overlay that has been passed, is that correct?
No.
We do have
We
one.
have a town center overlay. It's on the map already.
It's been there for,
How long?
it's like,
Recently,
Okay,
we
we've talked
amended
about
it
it,
for
so you're
river.
talking about amending that only.
Yeah.
To include.
Okay,
So there's a dotted line on that map on the wall there. That's the town center.
Yeah.
Remember
The
a couple
recorded
years
black.
ago, we had a conversation of like, what uses do we want in there? Because we had a car wash.
oh,
We're
that's
like,
right.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
when
it's gonna
that
run everybody
changed.
over, and we don't like that site for the car wash. So this is the same site that keeps getting kind of these highway demand uses, which Syracuse City is currently a suburban community. So that's why we're getting those things. So if we want to be something different than what we currently are, I know change is hard. We have to actually put something, this is where the rubber's hitting the road. And if we want to achieve our vision, our goals, these are the tools that we have to do so. Now that rubber's hitting the road and we're seeing things and we're like, man, I'm fine with that, and I'm fine with that. That's the
so-
vision. If that's fine, we can move forward. But obviously you're seeing some opposition from the gas station. The town center has a few vacant sites, and I think that if we hold kind of some of the siding and the projects that we've had, if we had 2 or 3 more, it'd really cement in that vision and really make a difference.
Okay, so I just want to be clear what's in the code and what's not, and what you're suggesting changes. Because we talk about vision, and I don't want the vision to get mixed with what is or is being proposed.
Black text here is in ordinance adopted,
Right.
has
Okay.
been for, I don't know how many decades.
Well,
Red text,
it's not decades.
It was
We've
like.
had an
late
overlay
90s.
for that.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we amended
Long
it.
time
We cleaned it up a little bit.
I thought okay.
it was, I think when that town center development.
When was this map printed? It's before
That was
that.
actually in 2000.
That's
That
2012.
was- But it's been 2
2002.
decades.
Okay, so go forward.
Doesn't matter. It's in there.
So what
Black
we're,
text is what's there now. Red text is what the new text. And we've reviewed this, and I thought we were pretty far down the road, and we said, okay, well, let's hear what planning commission has to say. Planning commission looked at it, and we held a public hearing. I know that there were some comments about maybe there wasn't a public hearing. We held a public hearing. We followed the public noticing requirements. Planning commission debated it 2 times, and they are forwarding a recommendation to approve this as written. There was a vote of 4-1. The dissenting vote was really related around worried about, as Antelope Drive gets widened, there's kind of like these remnant parcels. They're worried about, some exceptions to the setbacks.
Would it work on such a small parcel?
I don't know. I think
And
more than
it's-
anything, he felt that he wanted more discussion, didn't agree that they should forward it on. I
I
think
agree,
it would have been a 5-0 if they would have just.
okay, so then you had some comments, Jordan, about practicality of some of these changes. Let's start there.
Sure. So, and it mainly goes to what we already have. So the street facing the door shall be operable and open to public during business hours. So we have several buildings already built, primarily in the town center, the clock tower. And when you look at that, me and my wife were going out to eat, and there was a 15-minute wait. And so we went and kind of walked around inside that circle.
Mhm.
And so I don't think I would have wanted to stroll down Antelope right there.
Right. That's what they do.
So you look right there and none of those are operable. I mean, they look like entrances, but they're not operable.
Well, they might just not be unlocked.
Well,
but they're
that's where
operable.
the.
Well, sure, they're
But they're
operable.
not-
Employees.
They're
But the
not
problem
being
is-
used.
If you look at, for example, the Domino's, you'd be walking into their kitchen. And so the issue is when you say the roadside must be operable, but yet there's no parking on the roadside. Then
It's not
suddenly,
practical.
you have to park in the back, walk around the building and go in. You're hoping people are walking there, but if they're not, it's now extremely inconvenient. And they might choose to go somewhere else. So what I
That's why
don't want to have happen is create a zone that makes businesses have a more difficult time being successful. And so tell me how this, which admittedly looks like an operational storefront, I'm fairly certain all of those doors are locked.
Yeah.
And all
So
the lights
Or
don't
emergency-
actually
they're
go on.
Probably emergency egress.
And
some of it's
Sure.
eye candy, to be honest. I mean, what our public roads are what you see and what people experience as you drive through it.
So is this compliant to your zone?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, so you'd end up with
Just
a
needs to
front
open.
door and a back door, and if the back door, I think they could. I think some of those have blinds and things, but honestly, the community changes over time.
Right.
Right now, everybody drives everywhere, but
But-
as we get these infill projects with multifamily or other
Mm-hmm.
density, I think you'll get more and more people walking to these
Perhaps.
locations.
so scroll back to the right a little bit. So under what you're proposing, both of those storefronts would actually be non-viable because they put a window wrap in there.
Yeah.
That might
Even
be
though
the
it's
only
south
thing.
facing, and if you don't put a window wrap,
You
it is
can't-
blindingly
it's
hot.
Yeah, it's unbearable.
Yeah, that's how,
Yeah,
when
they-
they used to have the little tumbling place.
This is really close to meeting it. Maybe the branding color is, but who
We also do it for
who wouldn't
security.
agree that maybe that's a little obnoxious as well?
But if it was an advertisement, I
You know, Pink's T-Mobile though, I have to say.
Okay,
It's true. They
No,
use
I see what you're
color
saying.
as
So
a-
those are the things I wanted to
advertising.
talk about, is we've added in, the window shall not be covered by signs, by wrapping with vinyl or other signage material.
that's impractical for business. Any south-facing business is going to be unbearable.
I agree.
You guys can remove that.
So that's one I wanted, so I'm okay, if this meets it, and we realize that this is not going to be the main entrance. So operable, as long as we realize that operable does not mean the front door. And that I do think we need to allow, if you want to put some stipulation, no more than 75%, because maybe you want to be able to at least see something inside. I'm okay with putting a restriction, but not to the point where it prevents someone from allowing their the business to be successful because it is so hot.
Yeah, we should want like a billboard.
I get it. But those were a few of my concerns right there, primarily around the wrapping with vinyl. And again, if this is acceptable, I'm okay with it, because these buildings have the ability to switch, to go back and forth if they ever needed to, and have a beautiful little
Flexibility.
restaurant on that side.
Now,
on the
I
patio.
appreciate the look of walkability, but I have to question here.
The practicality.
If we're not trying to force Mayberry in a world where that's passed, because people don't walk. Even the smaller, older towns that have a main street, people don't walk them hardly at all. I know that
25th Street, for example. 25th Street, for example. It is designed for walkability.
It is.
And
then
people walk about
do
half a
not.
block and they.
And same thing with Logan's downtown, their old city, everybody loves the idea, but
I mean, I was there last weekend and the weekend before, and it was slammed with pedestrians.
really,
Yeah.
it's changed since I was
That
there
was like
last.
sidewalk
We-
sales,
we-
at fairs,
just
all that.
But it was a
Time
weekend?
It's-
All week there. I
it's-
was there
it's
for a
their
whole soccer
events,
tournament.
though.
Oh, okay.
They have that.
I was there 2 weeks in a row.
Right, I know, but that's
So-
when we did this in July.
If you're looking at retail
And
trends
it's awesome though.
Yeah.
post-COVID
I
here,
grew up there. So.
the
Yeah.
drive-throughs
I mean, I've lived there
are
for
a
7 years.
trend,
I
but
walked.
also like malls are dying everywhere. The
I
strip
know they
malls
are.
dying.
But we're not going back to the main street walking street.
A
We're
lot
just
of-
not.
A lot of trends. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. We don't want to be Disneyland.
The
We want it
most-
to be real,
The
but
most common question I get from people with regard to retail is, can I park near there? I mean, and that's usually from older residents who are saying things, and this is the prime example. They say it's so hard to park there, they don't use those stores. And that means that our retail is less viable because people can't park near there.
yeah, parallel parking is important for Main Street. retail.
And we're not gonna get that on Antelope. There's just no way we're gonna get parallel parking
Yeah,
on
when you
Antelope.
look at like going back to like, I think you mentioned 25th Street, what they've done is they've accommodated both. So you've
Yeah.
got pedestrians coming in on one side, but you know,
You
when
park
you
in
drive there,
behind.
you park in the back.
Yeah, and go
Yeah,
through
that's
back
exactly
doors.
how.
That's
Mono
Devon, too.
suburban.
And that's how. it
Yeah,
is.
it is.
When we go to the-
So the practice, so my question is the practicality of making these changes. Are we helping or hurting business to do this? I
Well-
get that you don't want to be Heber City and you don't want to be the,
No, we do want to be.
That's what he wants to do.
well,
He doesn't want to be
Oh.
Roy.
Or Logan.
we all of us collectively
Do we?
making decisions.
Well, that was
for
the vision we
city.
talked about.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not trying to, I'm not gonna pull us down a path that we don't want to go.
This is what's been adopted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess my point is if you look at the real hub of the city, the T of 2000 in Antelope, within a block in any direction, nobody's walking there except for the kids who walk home from school, which they do, and that's good, but nobody's walking those streets as a shopping center.
But we
Yeah,
are
so if-
infilling a lot of.
But the
density in that area.
the one time I have gone walking, I wasn't walking along Antelope. I was walking along inside where it was quieter. There were
Yeah.
trees.
Yeah, this isn't a perfect
I think I'm crazy. I
example
like to
here.
walk that area.
There's no trees.
You like to walk
There's no
along
on-street
Antelope?
parking.
I
I'll
was
stick
there.
with it.
Ultimately,
I don't
it's
have
up to
any-
you guys. This
I'll
is where
walk
the
the
rubber
council
hits the
meeting.
road, but our adopted vision is much more what we've already started down this path. So if we want to continue down this path, this amendment strengthens the direction we're going.
So
If we want to turn a 180, like if I can, let's look at a gas station in Maverick. This is very different to what the standard gas station will be. So economic development wise, if you look at the sales tax and look at all the good things that come from a Maverick, we could potentially lose that. But on the flip side, if you look at the development patterns and evaluate from a property tax, what's more valuable when it's assessed? A parking lot or buildings, multiple buildings in the same amount of land area? In the long run, the
Always.
city's budget is based off of those annual distributions of property
Okay,
tax.
but I want to be fair here and kind of consider the history of where we've been. Let's say that if we never allowed the first Maverick in because it doesn't meet this standard, and so that we never got that gas station. I honestly believe that because we do have a gas station, other businesses have come to our city. When you're a city without even a gas station, that's pretty desperate times. I mean,
Yeah, they probably would have located somewhere else
they
in
would
the
have,
city.
Yeah.
but so because it worked, I think it pushed development of other places. And so your argument that maybe the other kind is more profitable for property tax, this kind maybe gave us more. It may not be the same footprint, but it gave us more businesses. And I don't know that one is correct over the other. I'm just saying that I don't want to push businesses out if this is what they really need.
Like I see, and that's kind of where I was going with this is I'm okay with most of it. I do think that is a better product than having a whole bunch of stores sitting way back
Yeah.
with a parking lot in front. I am on board with that. So most of this, I totally agree. I do want to make sure that we allow for shading of their interior, which could be advertisements in windows and things like that.
You
I'm
know,
okay with that.
I'm sorry.
Advertisements.
Advertisements. So for example, you have Thai Jasmine also has
Yeah,
on the southeast side where that would be horrible.
Yeah,
And and their inside has more of it fits the ambiance. Go ahead.
I just
Carol.
wanted to say that maybe an example of what you're probably more talking about is like on Riverdale Road, where they have some businesses up front, but they're not necessarily walk-in because the road is so dang busy.
that's right. That's a good
And-
point.
But it does have the requirements of the exterior, a nice exterior
Mhm.
Yeah,
along
it
the
still meets the
road.
architectural
And if we're
standards.
That's
really
my point.
analyzing why there's a difference, a good point would be you can't physically cross Riverdale Road because
Right.
it's so busy and so wide.
And but I
And
occasionally
Antelope
do
is
see-
kind of, yeah, they
you
do, you take their
see,
life in their own
and you're like,
hands.
oh, bless you. But yeah,
But if that's the point, are we not kind of there on Antelope?
But they're
That
still,
it's not a
following-
crossable
but they're
street.
still currently following or pushing towards that architectural standard, even in
Yes.
spite of the
right.
speed and the width and
But see,
everything.
if
And
I
they're
had
trying to
something
make
like
it-
that,
Attractive.
I'm okay with it.
And but they have as lot
That's
less
where we need to get to the
landscape in
bottom of.
between.
Are we okay
Yeah.
being Clinton?
I'm okay being Clinton. I
And that
think it
has a
fits
heavier
where we
buffer.
are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this has a heavier buffer than maybe Riverdale, which I would be okay with Riverdale version of it, being closer,
But-
sidewalks available.
I mean, there's parts of
closer
it. I
to the
mean, this one
building,
image, sure, that looks
allowing
fine, but there's other
more commercial
aspects
space.
of
per
I-
square
2000
foot.
that in Clinton don't meet what I would consider
I think
a
our
city
real goal
center
here is to make
to
sure that the
like
street
corner
side is beautiful.
with McDonald's and all
Yes.
that right on
And I
there.
think
Just
that's
that-
what we're after is
Right.
Yes.
not necessarily a functional street side entrance, but what we're really after is a beautiful
right from
street side area that looks like this. I'm agree with no parking between the sidewalk and the store. And this has that. You park around back, but the main entrance isn't back. We're not, these guys don't have to create sidewalks to get into Costa Beta from the sidewalk because 2000 is a long road.
This still would be problematic for a gas station though.
The gas station, we're gonna have to,
I had a hard time with that. I mean, just based on the idea that we're talking about creating a pedestrian friendly, walkable, safe area. And then they came in and said, this town center overlay creates an unsafe environment for them. So how do we then justify what they're saying with that? It's been done. I see it as more safe creating this type of town center overlay than.
You know, that's
than
an
the way it's
interesting thing. If you look at
situated.
like Park City, they've required more,
They have a very high
More-
architectural standard.
Yeah.
But they have narrow streets too, so there's,
Yeah.
you know,
Some areas,
It
but
does-
but it's all throughout, all the way to.
but their
Kimball
gas
Junction.
stations
Sure.
still exist there.
It's true.
It's hard to find businesses there.
but when I was in Park City 2 weeks ago and you go down to near where it's where they always have the Zupas and everything.
Mhm.
And again, everything is on the interior. There's nothing on the street side, even in Park City.
Yeah,
The development is off of the street on creating a local area that people can walk around within. And so think of inside the Antelope or the town center, you can create a walkable area inside. You'll have you can walk over to Wendy. Well, you have to cross that road, but there's always roads you have to walk, but you can walk within it.
I don't want
There's
to
some
create a
circulation.
situation where businesses are not welcomed, but
I don't think any of us do,
yeah.
you
Right.
know, none
Yeah.
of us do.
Hello, I'm in.
Yeah.
Economic development.
But I think
We want
there's a point,
businesses.
when there's a
Yeah.
point when we get to these that I think we are saying that the standard doesn't meet the area.
Well, it's a decision you guys have to make is how desperate are we? Do we want anything? First one that comes in? Or do we want to be more picky? That's up to you.
So I think most of your guidelines here, so all front doors shall face the public street. I don't think we need that one. I'm okay with the doors being on the back, similar to the picture you were just showing, or similar to Park City.
So all main streets have an operable door, just to that extent, not necessarily
Sure,
deleting whether it's the front door.
yeah,
or-
allow it
Add a
to
door.
to
You gotta have a
transition
door
to
get
that.
it. You gotta be able to get in.
Yeah.
Or egress for out, you know. like emergency.
So it should be operable, open to business, public during business hours. Again, I don't think
I don't think
the
that's-
door facing one has to be open to public. I
Sorry,
think-
maybe you lost me. You're saying you do think there should be a door facing the
There's
street?
just
doesn't necessarily need to be the front
It doesn't need to
the
be.
main
I'm okay having an egress there so that it makes,
Just like our town center.
yes,
Yeah.
it
Okay.
makes it more viable in the future.
We
Yeah,
don't have to
so-
force them to have that door open. It's
Yeah,
because
Yeah.
there are businesses that won't want that door.
Just
Right.
just like our
security.
town center building.
So
So you're
so
saying
there,
it
there
does
needs to
not
be
need
a
to be
street
open
facing door. It doesn't
during
have to be a
public
front
hours.
door.
It doesn't have to be the main door.
and, but what I'd like to have happen is, so let's say in the future, someone wants to build this bistro that we all want someday. They could reorient their business to come out that way. So let's make it flexible space. The other thing, so I don't think we need to require an operable or an open to public during business hours, street facing door. I'm okay with it looking like a glass storefront. But again, I don't think it has to be the main entrance.
But so
Do you want
you redline
require
that, but
glass or
it
not?
needs to be operable or no?
No,
Okay. Because operable
Well-
just means it's a door
It
that can
opens.
open.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think
They
it
can
has to be
lock
operable.
But
It
not
just doesn't
Yes,
have to be
yes, but
open.
not
Right,
during
I guess
business
not a faux
hours.
door.
Not,
They
how
can
about
lock
just
it.
not accessible, it doesn't have to be accessible by the public.
It's gotta have
So
hinges.
employees can use it.
emergency
but-
locks
access
open and close.
possible.
But the
Yeah.
public may be
Yeah.
If
restricted.
you lock it, that's up to you.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yep.
that-
Okay.
I
That's
Operable.
That's operable.
Keep it.
So those are only two things. So also you need to strike all front doors shall face the public street. I'm okay if they face the parking lot because that's where I want to park and I want to walk around the building to get in.
But you
Neither
won't-
does-
And it
you
does
won't get
create
that
that
anymore.
area that you can shop in.
What do you mean you won't get that anymore?
But as we change, if there's a door, they could change it to their front door.
If it doesn't face the street, then you won't get those.
I think you
Won't
just
get
saying
what?
that's the front door.
The
I mean,
front.
what we're calling the front door
Oh,
means
front
main
doors.
entrance to some of us. I
Yeah.
think that's
Front.
the-
Yes.
that's the
Front
problem here is
doors.
Public access.
Yes.
All Main
Okay,
Street,
so
also,
maybe-
all main streets need to have a door that's operable.
So it has to have a street facing door.
But it
But
doesn't.
it doesn't have to be
but
the
Doesn't
front
have to
door
be
can
I think we
the
can-
business door.
It could be
Okay.
like 5.
I think Brody
Maybe
said that like 10
6.
minutes ago. but-
Sorry, and thanks guys for humoring me on all of this, for letting me vent a little bit. I just read through this over and over again and I'm like,
It's okay.
it kind of breaks what we have and it forces us down a path where no one gets to park in front of an entrance.
It breaks what we
Which-
have, but in this town center, it kind of follows what we already have.
Well, it
That's
doesn't say
true.
you can't have a back door. It just depends on what you're calling your front door.
Don't
and
call it the back door.
Just call it a door.
Call it the back
so-
door, we end up.
All
So
right, I
you
want to
will
address
have
the
a door.
The back door.
I want to
faces the
address the
street.
public
Yes.
comment that came in, and that public comment was that these new rules would prohibit a large gas station from coming in. Certainly, it would not make the traditional land layout of a big gas station. So the question is, does this really prohibit it? Does this really make it non-functional?
I
So,
mean, there's instances.
I was
Can't you just
hoping
put
they
the
would have
building-
stayed so we can ask them more questions.
Can't you just put the building up against the road and have all the parking
They have to
behind?
live through so
I've seen
many
that
amenities.
There are examples of that.
The problem
I-
they
I-
stated was just that they would have that front drive aisle right into the neighbors, and you know, the office space to the.
I've
to
met
the
with them
east.
multiple times.
Yeah, they also have, so they're buying property from a neighboring
Right.
store who owns the property. And there's there's an unknown distance that that store wants them to be back so that it
Oh,
doesn't
so
block
it
their
doesn't
view.
block the view of the people who own the
But
property.
they don't know what the distance is and neither do we.
So if we
that's
had them
unknown,
put
right, that
it,
we can't
if we
really-
had it be,
How do you?
if the building were closest to the road, then you would have to come off of Antelope partially into a subdivision in order to turn
Oh, wow.
into their parking
No.
lot? Is
You'd
that
have
what
to-
they're
you'd
you'd have to
saying?
come in at the
Partially
PEC
into the-
office space.
Yeah, you'd have to come into
And
one of the business buildings
Okay,
to go through into.
Which is
there.
what they're already kind of proposing here anyway, but they're just talking about you'd have to come in a long distance. And
So I've had multiple meetings
is
with
what I understand.
this particular gas station and let me just say this particular large gas station is gonna have a hard time fitting on the site, given the constraints. But a gas station could, and there are gas stations that have fit into sites. It's just each company has their thing that works and things that they want to see, and whether or not they're willing to bend on it is up to them. So the question is, could you make it a gas station work on this site? Yes, absolutely you could. Could this exact site with the exact dimensions that they want to build work on this site? Maybe not. And so that's something they have to decide if the site is good for them. If we really, really, really want this, we're gonna have to decide if we're gonna carve out a section of the town center or make an exception like they were requesting, or have certain standards for gas stations only. Because
You just have a little hole because it goes beyond there. It heads east. All the way to Banbury.
yeah, I mean, like I said before, I worry about in this business of doing development agreement after development with special exceptions for every site. But
Yeah,
it can be done.
The hole in the town center overlay. I don't think that makes sense to me.
But as you look at this, what they've done is they put a little dining area next to the park. They have, I mean, they're essentially building a slushy stand next to the park with gas tanks in front.
Probably. You can imagine the drinks.
Yeah, this is one of their.
I know,
models.
that's
You
what I'm
see it-
thinking.
You see this exact one in
Cha-ching.
so many places.
Oh, yeah, it's a chain. They take it off the shelf. It's what they built. They don't want to veer too far from it.
Yeah, so I do kind of see in this particular circumstance where they are putting a dining area next to a park. Like I said, that they're probably thinking they're gonna sell 10,000 slushies on a 100-degree day, and they're probably right.
Yep.
If you move this now further away from the park, you're gonna have people crossing the parking lot to get their slushie. And I
Yeah,
see the complaint.
the way the ordinance is written, parking shall not be located to the front of the building. There's like a giant parking lot. for
There
the
Parking.
is, yes.
setback, maximum of 40 feet. Their building's like, I don't know how many 100 feet back. So they're gonna have a hard time meeting that the way it's
So-
proposed.
But that's
So,
how
yeah,
you build a store.
I guess what I would like to
That's how you
see,
build a gas station.
Yeah.
But, if you guys, like I keep
Well,
saying.
Noah suggested to them that, of a possible layout where, they put the building sideways facing east. They can get it closer to the road and have the pumps on the east side still visible from the road, accessible from Antelope.
and what do they say to that? Because that seems to make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, it actually does make a lot of sense.
What they provided in the.
They don't
public
want that.
info.
'cause it's not on a hard corner.
What?
They don't like it because it's not on a hard corner.
Well, because we just told them they don't have
CVS.
to have the front door facing the sidewalk
The view
anymore.
shed.
They think CBS will be blocked and won't approve it.
Yeah, CBS and.
But
like I
CVS
said, they
can't,
have what they know that works. and they
CVS
don't wanna
can't
do
tell
it.
them that they have to violate city code.
But CBS
They don't
needs
have-
to say they don't have to sell.
Are they selling? I don't
Yeah.
Yeah,
see.
there's something like that.
They can not sell, so.
Where does CVS own to?
The whole thing.
The-
To the field.
Yeah, to the
There's two
field, to
lots
the
and stuff.
undeveloped land.
Okay. I was unaware of that. It looks like they're
So-
also.
I mean, I guess there's another question, and that is a gas station really the best fit for a town center,
That's
period,
what those.
Well,
period.
We've got a lot of people saying they want it.
Well, and the-
It's all still a
and I
valid
think
question.
I think the answer then generally to your
Good people
question,
from Idaho.
Mayor Pro Tem, is that, is this preventing business? There's other complicating factors too, like
Yeah.
who they're buying property from that might be more restrictive than what.
Than what
We
we
were
are.
telling them it
Yeah, that
works,
might be
if they
actually hurting their
Right.
business. but
adhere to it.
It just kind of goes back to, what do you want and what are you willing to?
So for the purpose of this meeting, have we concluded anything that we can move forward, or are we
Oh,
concluding?
there's
that we
one more
still-
thing down below in the signage.
Okay, well, I thought we were making some good progress on this. See, we got some things crossed out. That's good.
That's good.
Okay, I
Thank
think
you.
we're good with,
Shows we're doing work.
Okay, now, can we add in there?
Never
having attractive
confuse activity with accomplishment.
road-facing
I'm not sure
features.
we've done anything productive
But
yet.
seriously,
cross
that-
things
I
out.
do really want to make sure that we add attractive features on facing the road.
Yes, the road must be,
Architectural features.
the road needs to be sexy.
That sounds
So-
good.
We just put that in.
Okay, so I think sexy is
It's
the wrong
already
word for
in
the
the
ordinance.
Someone will take it
And I
down.
do-
It's true. Never mind, don't
We
be
get a
so sexy.
definition there.
For me too.
There's gonna be all kinds of stuff.
I know.
The building will get us.
Sexually oriented businesses, is that
Yeah,
what somebody
no,
wants?
No, I retracted
No,
my statement.
That did not come up in this meeting.
Okay, so you had something with signs.
Thank you.
The only thing in signs was we still are saying multi-level when it's supposed to be multi-tenant.
Okay.
We did agree to that
Sure.
last time.
Yeah, so if there's like a thing like over
Yeah,
where the new
so-
O'Reilly's is, we want to make sure
Yeah.
they rush.
Yeah,
because-
so you still have it, they can only do a larger sign if associated with a multi-story office building, maybe up to 15 feet. We said, we go up,
Multi.
up,
tenant
up,
office.
well, there too, sure. There's one up above too.
Yeah, that one.
Multi-tenant.
Um,
They're both.
We decided on multi-tenant as opposed to multi-story.
Yeah,
Yeah, we don't care how tall it is. We care how many
We
people
want
are in
them
there.
consolidated.
We want to make sure they all have the chance to be advertised.
So the one in Clinton worked in that image you showed with
Yeah.
Costa Vida.
Yeah.
Right.
and those.
Okay. That's easy.
Well, I don't know that we're ready to,
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel like, I feel like this is,
It's coming.
meets what we're after, but this does not, apparently this does not resolve the O'Reilly,
no,
or not the
Maverick.
O'Reilly, the
So here's the
Maverick.
question. Maverick's asked for a time to come and meet with us and talk specifically about how this affects them. Do we want to grant that in a future work session?
I would love to. I would love to sit down with them and say, how can we
Help
work,
you.
how can we help you
Come here.
work with what we need and to help us understand what part of this is,
Okay, so I'm going to suggest this then, to just draw it to a close. They've probably met with just a couple of people at a time, way too many times. So I think that at this
Never
point,
who have they met with?
Never
Have they
met.
met with any council members?
No.
they met with you, you keep saying lots of
Staff member
times. And you,
I met with them
So-
Yeah.
at planning commission.
so the point would be, they probably need to come meet with this group who's actually going to vote on it and all of us so that we can hear them.
Like I said, I was sad they left because I would have loved to have had them part of this
Yeah, I'm not
discussion.
sure
what
we
they were
really
saying-
could, because that's,
Yeah, well,
we're talking about city center.
And the
Fair.
one gal, though.
So
she
the
actually
new
said-
item- The new item should read, the new agenda item should read, listen to the concerns of applicant to the effect of the ordinance. Is that, or something to that effect? Oh, they're not applicants.
Potential applicant.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
No,
but
not at all.
I mean, if we want to hear how they think this is going to affect, then let's make it that an item and not say we're going to discuss this, because I don't need their input for this. I need their input for how it affects them.
Yes.
And I want to be clear
Yeah,
about
you
that. I
don't
don't
base
want
the
to say,
entire ordinance.
yeah,
on-
I don't want to say rewrite my ordinance Maverick, because that's not the way this is supposed to work.
Yeah.
Not
This shall
supposed
be
to at
applicable
least.
applicable to everybody except for Maverick.
No, so,
Right.
but I'm willing to have them, so that
Don't
would
say that
probably
out
need
loud.
to be on the next work session.
Yeah.
So
August.
that would be the August work session.
Yeah, we would love to have them. We'd love to work with them. We hope that we can make it all work out because I think they're a huge asset to the community.
Yep.
But we need to understand what what they have to have and what they want to have.
I don't know that we're writing a letter to that effect, but yes, we'd like to hear from them.
And when I've met with them, I've
That was pretty
reiterated
verbose.
that we want them, we want to make this work for them. This is not a Maverick thing. This is a town
But they
center
have to,
thing.
but to any business, they have to make it work for us too. So I need to have that interaction moment in public, in front of everybody else. So let's move on.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go to item F. Thank you, Noah. Discussion regarding proposed adjustments to City Hall staffing level. Brody, is this you?
Yeah.
Okay. We way went over on that, which is okay,
Another complicated.
which is okay.
Sorry, they were all my adjustments.
Okay. Yeah, I was worried about the very same one.
Okay, good. I don't wanna hijack meetings.
There's just no reason to say.
Okay. You saw the memo. I'm just going to run through a little, some background data on how we arrived here. So we've got a couple of things, a couple of dynamics happening as City Hall. I'm going to talk about the court. I'm going to talk about CED. This is a graph of our activity in the court. It's a quarterly report. I want to focus first on the attention on the upper left-hand graph. You see the red lines. Those are the number of traffic cases, traffic-related cases coming into the court per quarter since 2018. The blue line is the number of misdemeanor cases coming through the Justice Court. The bottom left-hand is the associated revenue generated from these cases. The green represents total revenue, but we split revenue with the state court system. So the city share is the red line. And then upper right hand are the fees, pleas and abeyance, warrants, contempt fees, that sort of thing. Now, prior to the pandemic, we were seeing kind of, if you look at the average lines, the trend lines, there was kind of a gentle decline in cases and revenue in our court. And we were teetering on whether to reduce staffing in the court anyway. And then when the pandemic hit, that just kind of like pushed us over the edge that, yeah, it's time to, and that's what we did last budget season. If you recall, we moved someone out of the court. Well, as you can see, based on since December of 2020, we've started to have a pretty sharp increase in particularly traffic cases. And that coincides with our dedication of patrol officer to traffic. And with our plan to have a traffic unit, we would expect that number to continue to rise. And so we've reached a point where the activity is starting to get not only before pre-pandemic levels, or yeah, back to pre-pandemic levels, but even higher. And so we expect that we're going to need that other, at least half of a full-time employee back in the court. So here's kind of how it sits right now. We just have a court clerk supervisor, one full-time, and then we have a part-time court clerk to help out with the administration of the court. What we're proposing is to add, this is returning back to our previous staffing level, just adding a half full-time equivalent back to it. And then, so that's just what we're asking now. And then just what we're not asking, but putting on the radar is as we watch the traffic unit come online, you know, and commensurate with the fees that come into the court, we may be coming later asking for another part-time or full-time court clerk to handle all the cases. So in your packet, we have an outline there of, you know, how the money works out. The fees that come in would cover the cost of adding this back in. So that's any questions on the court staffing before I move on to CED? Pretty simple.
So is this something we were not anticipating? I guess we just finished a whole budget cycle where we were looking at full-time and part-time people adding staffing, and this wasn't even brought up.
Yeah, so the trend line going back here.
So we did this is new data since we've finished our budget.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so we don't get the data starting, you know, January 1st.
Right.
We get it at the end of the quarter, and then you don't know if it's a trend until the next quarter, which was July.
Okay.
You know, so we're just watching it happen as we speak.
Okay.
Did we expect it? Yeah, but we didn't necessarily expect it to be this fast.
Less speeders in Syracuse.
We're watching more too.
Okay, so moving to CED, this is kind of geographic representation of where we have projects that are either coming onto the slate or that are already under construction, big and small. There's a lot of homes, commercial projects that are associated with all these locations. So we got 42 different projects in CED. And you've heard Noah say this before, once it's approved by the council, that's just the beginning. The staff is working with them for the next 2 to 3 years or more.
To be fair, the temple's on there twice.
You sure
It's a really
is?
big project.
And in terms of like,
That's true.
in terms of building inspection reviews and things like that, it's worth being on there.
All right.
It's twice to the word.
It probably will be.
So this graph shows our permit activity since 2010. So first, starting out with the annual permits. So 2010, right, we're coming out of the Great Recession. We had 273 total building permits. As you can see, it's climbed over time. It's now more than basically quadrupled since then. But in terms of staffing, in 2013, we had 1 full-time inspector and 1 official. Now, the building official is an inspector that goes out and does inspection. They're just the supervising inspector. So since then, we've more than doubled the number of annual permits that we handle, but we've only added a half of an inspector. I can tell you just by talking with these guys and the looks in their eyes, they're getting burned out, and I'm afraid we're going to lose them. But what's that?
We are losing one.
Well, one's retiring,
Right.
but I'm afraid we're going to lose the other 2. So what we're proposing here, and it's probably a little overdue, but we're trying to be conservative with how we hire staff, especially this can be a cyclical business, so you don't want to like jump on it and then
have to lay them off.
have to lay them off. But I think we're at a point where you have to, we have to do something. We have to increase the number of inspectors. So this is what we have today. So there's your full-time, your chief building official. You've got your full-time inspector. You've got 2 permit techs. Now, permit techs, they're the admin side. They handle all the admin side. And we've got a full-time employee who is half inspector, half code enforcement officer. He's the one that is currently, he's been out on a medical issue.
Why is he on crutches? 'Cause
He's
He's not actually in crutches.
Yeah, this is just a graphical representation. There's time.
Demonstration purposes only.
He's on light duty due to medical issue. And he's also let us know that he and his wife, who also works for the city, are going to leave this fall to go on a mission. So what we're looking at now is how to handle this when we're already, overloaded with work and we're going to lose an inspector.
Can I just ask something here?
Yeah.
So with the advent of, was it House Bill 98, that now says they can hire their own inspectors, is there any reason why we just don't let them do that?
There's a lot of concern about.
I thought it was.
Now it has to be independent. It can no longer be employed by.
I don't think that actually got anywhere in the session because.
I know it got vetoed, but I was told it was coming back.
The worry
Yeah, they
is
can
that,
That was passed.
the worry is that they'll have,
Okay, that's what I thought.
like, one developer, hey, you inspect mine, I'll inspect yours.
Right,
you
we'll let
straighten
you
it
off
out.
easy, which is not
Right.
right.
Exactly, and then you end up cutting corners, there's a lot of.
But the thing is, they can do that anyway.
And that's, I think,
There's
Gordon's
nothing here-
question is, if we can't stop them, then will we get less requests because they're gonna do it anyway?
And then we have to lay someone
But
off.
we're talking about something that I.
That's
doubt
something that
will-
we've considered for sure.
Yeah.
Of just, all right, well, let's just let the inspection.
I'd rather
timeline
not, but
get
there's no
further
provision
out,
that says
and
we
then
can
they'll
force
get
it.
their
I thought
own.
they can only get their own inspector if.
That's
we
our
meet their demands.
decision.
It
right?
is
Under the-
still?
As far as I know,
This,
it
because
did
this came
not
back
pass.
too
None
many
of that
times. I'm not sure
It
what
just said
version
it
actually.
didn't.
Where
got
did it
through.
land? Because I think that's directly applicable to this discussion.
Yeah, I think you're right.
14 days.
It,
If we can't.
So
fulfill
if you do it within
14
14 days, they can't do it on their own. Is that what you're saying?
That's my understanding.
That's.
Okay.
Well, then
that
that's a
sounds
reason to
correct.
do this, because we want our people to do it, not them
Yeah.
to do their own.
Yeah, but we can take that option when we have considered
It's on the
that.
table for sure.
The concern I have is when you have an inspector that works for the city, you have direct supervision on how well they're inspecting.
Right.
And the liability.
There's a
Like a
lot
neutral
of,
third
there's a
party.
lot of discretion in inspecting.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I can tell you, our guys are really good and really detailed, and I've seen things that they've caught that have actually saved lives. And so if ultimately the public safety is our goal here, make
Which
sure all of
that's-
our buildings are inspected, I have more confidence in our neutral third party guys than maybe, they're supposed to be neutral third party too by the state law. But is what it does, that's still an option. They could get their own, but we feel that it actually decreases the level of service to our residents. And in my mind, there's some question about whether or not they're really a neutral third party. if
So
they're
the
working
question-
exclusively for one
Right.
builder, but they're still got their own
Exactly.
little LLC that they're kind of.
But at the same time,
Exactly.
I want to make sure that that we say that
We're
there are a
gonna
lot of
contract with
top-notch
you
inspectors out there.
Yeah.
That,
I think there are, but. I
if they
think
miss
they're-
things, are they, do they hold any liability for things they
No.
totally missed?
They're
They're licensed, yeah.
We have governmental immunity. They don't have.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is it behooves them to be good inspectors.
And the
Yeah,
thing
even
is
if
too-
they're third party, they've.
Even if
still
they're
gotta
third
do
parties,
that.
I don't see you're gonna see,
Okay,
think
but-
you're gonna see rubber stamping because their integrity's on the line.
When I worked in the industry, there were a lot of people who were, used the gray areas of, this may not work, but it kind of meets the code. I mean, there's some gray areas in some of those.
Sure, but the thing is, if it doesn't pass, if whatever they missed fails, they are now in on the lawsuit because they don't have that immunity.
I really think we want to try to have our city do it.
I don't know, that it's necessarily always just about safety liability. It's also about cutting corners and like quality and everything else. So there's
Yeah.
there's
Are
other
they-
areas.
But
other than
I've never
just-
heard of an inspector saying, you can't use that 2x4.
Well, we've had
Well,
our
I have,
inspectors,
absolutely.
we've had our
Yeah,
inspectors
I've been on
say,
the job site and had
hey,
that.
this isn't what you agreed to in the plan. Your facade isn't correct. We've had that.
Yeah, and there
And
my
that's nothing to do with
concern,
safety.
they're gonna be good on like, the structural things and,
Mhm.
my concern is that you don't know if they're gonna be good or not on the nuisance things that, maybe they're not life safety, but it causes a little bit of a problem for the homeowner down the road.
So do
Type of
we,
thing.
do we tell our inspectors to look for those things as well?
Yeah, our inspectors,
Are well
Or they could be
trained.
of a development agreement and they make them totally.
they have some discretion still.
Okay.
But they're not out there to cut corners.
Right.
Because they're trying to generate more
Or
work.
get through there really quick.
And if we wanted to do a strategy of letting them provide their own inspectors, I would guess that before a lot of these builders started getting their own, it's gotta get really bad. So that means our department's level of service just tanks, everybody's frustrated, fine, I'll get my own inspector, and then our image of our city and the professional aspect of providing good inspections.
I will say
Or
on
some of the
on
impetus
the
for the
on the,
legislation,
I don't know if you
Yeah.
call us a pro,
which we don't
but
want to get there.
We're
I
not the
mean,
bad guys.
one of the benefits of letting them do the third party thing is, hey, that's less administration we have to do.
That's what I'm
You
wondering.
know,
It's at least worth considering in
Yeah.
this discussion.
I mean, that takes load off us.
Yep.
So it's something to consider.
So do we need to revisit what it costs for us to provide this service? Meaning, are permits in line to cover, if we have to raise the level of staff to cover this?
Do the fees pay
Do the fees-
the,
Let's just say that
Yeah.
the fees cover
Yeah.
this.
Okay. and then if that's the
Sure.
case, and
Yeah.
I know you presented the
100%.
math, and so as I think back on that, it was worth having discussion, but I actually agree that we provide a higher level of service. Our guys are looking at more of those types of things. And so I'm okay as long as the fees cover the service and this is not a taxpayer burden.
I'm going to say this too, because this really concerns me. And this is an argument for having our people do this. But when you get into multi-tenant, there are a lot of nuances to safety of multiple units. And it's really easy for people to cut corners with shared lines in multiple units. They're fire hazards. And I've seen people try to get away with that. And I don't
Well, so our fire marshal's still inspecting all of these buildings, right?
Yeah, and.
So they're not, even if they have their own inspector, our fire marshal is still going through. They're not outsourcing the fire marshal.
But the fire marshal doesn't look at things like, here's an example. When I was working in Mississippi, an inspector caught, and I was not the plumber, but I was another contractor. And I was watching, I was a carpenter and I'm watching the plumber get inspected, and they had used joints that shared between lines. And that joint allows fire to go freely between the two units. And they said, but the water lines can have water in it. How could it happen? Well, it's going to be dry when there's a fire, so they didn't get caught, but they were saying, oh, this saves me a whole line for every unit in this 3-story building. I want to make sure those kind of things are caught and not gone, oh, well, we can justify it away.
And you're saying they might be full of methane, which actually helps conduct fuel from a fire. From one
I support where we're going. Can we,
Okay.
I don't know what you guys
Let's
think,
not get into minutia.
So just so
Sorry.
we're clear on what the proposal is, and what the proposal isn't. I just wanted to show you, there's a
Yeah.
2-step process for this one, because what we're asking is to hire the full-time inspector now while we still have the code enforcement officer. He's on light duty. He can't do some inspections. He can't actually visit people's house to do code enforcement. But he can do, like, he can call them and follow up. And
So what
That's
happens if we
frustrating.
make a full-time, right now we have a full-time that splits his time.
Yeah.
So then we're gonna make this guy full-time. So where's code enforcement go?
yeah,
We make
so-
him a new half-time?
So what's gonna
Great
happen
segue.
here is during the time that he's still around,
I'm planning this.
yeah, during this time where he's still around, we'll have code enforcement through one of the inspectors or in-house during this transition period. Then what the proposal is he retires, we have the new inspector in place. At that point, we would hire a dedicated part-time, maybe 20 hours a week code enforcement officer as a separate person. So what this does is it increases by half
By
of
half.
a person our inspection, and to put the council on notice that in the near future, as we follow the activity that's coming in and the fees that are coming in, we may ask for another full timer.
So, yeah, that's my concern, is that we've had it in the past when code enforcement's a part-timer. It's been hard to get somebody who just wants a part-time job that has enough experience to really understand code. I mean, there's a lot of changes that happen to code regularly. So
Yeah.
we want somebody who's going to be active in this department anyway.
Our hope, our vision is kind of like an ideal candidate might be like a retired police
With
officer.
a second, yeah.
Mhm. Who just wants to
But
work
what if you don't
part-time.
find that? Because that's been an issue in the past. You say, well, there's some ideal profiles,
Sure.
but nobody applied.
Well, we did.
That's how
We
this
had,
started
that's how
out.
Ken started.
Okay.
Yeah,
He was the perfect
he's a
candidate.
retired police officer.
Well, there you
Well,
go.
and a need, if the need arises, we'll work to fill it, but
Yeah.
can't really decide how that will happen until we're there.
Yeah, if it becomes where, there's nobody,
Yeah.
then yeah, we might have to come and say, hey, we need a full-time inspector who is a part-time code enforcement officer.
Yeah.
Get back to this, but just with the extra FTE.
And
then pray he
the
never quits.
projected
Time
fees,
for mention.
will cover it.
Work your even.
Okay.
So there's no, based on the proposals here tonight.
There's no budgetary impact.
There's no tax impact. There is
Sweet.
budgetary impact, but it's related to
It's related to
projected
shifting
fees.
things around.
Right.
These are based on fees for service and
Right.
fines.
Okay, and
Okay,
that's why I'm
so-
okay with it. They cover the cost.
It sounds like we've discussed this plenty. It's going to be on the next agenda for a vote, so we don't need to take a vote tonight. So let's move on. We're okay with
Well,
that.
yes, would it be next agenda?
It just depends. We're gonna have to do a budget opening eventually.
Yeah.
To correct it.
I think it'd be similar to our process with the 2 police officers. We'll do a budget opening as the
So we can,
budget calls for it.
okay,
I would just
So
like to hire
future
this
items-
person as soon as possible.
That's the way we handle the police officers.
It's within budget now, but that's it.
okay.
So we would adjust the revenue,
In a
Stop.
future budget
Yeah.
opening, but it's covered.
and we can do that in a month or two.
Okay. Item F, or no, G. No, we're not. Item G, fiscal year 2021 general fund surplus priorities and fund balance discussion. And I see Steve coming to the table, which is very exciting. You're up.
Oh, exciting. Fund balance. I'm not gonna go over too much in detail on the actual fund balance. I think we'll spend most of our time on the priorities. In the packet, you guys did read through, hopefully, the fund balance policy as it's written currently. The state law did change this year, if you remember, to 35%. And so we'll have to mention that at least in the fund balance policy. The question becomes, is 16.7%, which is 2 months of the year, sufficient? Do you want it higher than that? You could go all the way to 35 if you wanted, but my recommendation is to keep it either at 16.7 or possibly 3 months or 24%. That gives you the leeway to use the excess funds for surplus. If you keep it in your rainy day fund, the 16.7, really you can't touch it unless you have you meet certain criteria with, an economic downturn or emergency type uses.
Can I chime in on that piece?
Yeah.
So one of the things that the rating agencies in the bond market look at, if you do set a policy at a minimum fund balance and then you go below it,
Oh,
it shows
gotta-
mismanagement.
You've got to come up with a plan.
And it
I'd rather,
hurts
so it's
on your
probably
credit.
better to keep it lower, and then if we're above it,
Because
then
we're at
great.
25.
But
We're at 16.7
But I mean, we're-
as our minimum.
But we're
The
currently
last
We're
at-
currently
four-
at 25,
currently
which
at-
is,
Yeah.
well,
I like that
30.
concept
We're like
better.
flush, right?
Yeah, the
So-
last 4 or 5 years, we've been around the 24-25%.
Good.
So like what Steve
Keep it
said,
balanced.
that gives you the choice to use that money if you want to,
Right.
above 16.
Versus
But-
reserving it and.
like
So
earmarking
my
it.
question with that is,
payment,
can
more if we
we-
want to, but-
can we hold on to it without adjusting our policy that it's,
Yes.
so we can?
Yeah.
Up to
Okay.
35%.
Up to
Mm.
35.
So if it doesn't require a policy change, I would not recommend one, and it
I
sounds
wouldn't
like
either.
nobody else would either. So that one's an easy done. The next question is, do we hold it or do we spend it?
I thought we already had this discussion.
Well, we talked about priorities and then putting it on this for
It's
discussion.
put to that-
Okay, this
to
is
actually-
a follow-up.
So based on what you're saying there, I'd recommend keeping where you're at 24-25% in the general fund. With the remainder of it then being surplus that we transfer to our capital projects fund and prioritize.
Yeah.
And that's where we're talking about the $1 to $1.5 million.
That falls
So
above
that's the second part of
25%.
this discussion. Yeah, that's above the 25%. So that's the second part of this discussion is, now that you've decided, let's keep the 25% here, what do we want to do with the $1.5
My
million?
first priority would probably be to leave it there for the next 6 months. And the reason I say that is we're still kind of coming out of COVID. We're not sure. I mean, we're talking about,
But we have we're a lot of projects behind too. I mean,
Are we?
I just say, like, for instance, roads, one of those suggestions is like Glen Eagles Drive, probably never driven it. It's horrible. And it's just a road that needs to be addressed. I'm saying
Okay.
that there's some things that need to be taken care of and they don't wait, they'll just keep getting worse.
Sure.
It's one
But
of the capital
where is that
projects.
on our 5-year plan currently?
I
Was it
don't
one of the
know, but it
start-
was
so
one of
with
the
the start items, the
suggestions that was.
suggestions
it
on
was
the
one of
capital projects?
suggestions.
So the items that are starred are road only projects.
Okay, I was just trying.
They
Right.
don't have utilities
It
associated.
was
with
just
them.
one of those that really
Okay.
stuck out
So
to
would
me
be
because
good
I'm like,
to-
yes, I would
Good
agree with
candidates.
that one.
yeah,
There are some things.
fair
that
enough. I think fixing roads is a priority because
You get further behind.
Right.
longer
Yeah.
rates.
the harder it is to catch up and it's very difficult.
Right.
And it's a
So,
very
okay, I can-
visual commitment to our citizens as well, which I really
Exactly.
like to.
I'm
that's-
okay with
that's the
that too.
biggest-
Well, and we talked about the converting areas, are strips that we've already talked about. I thought we had hit
I
50,000.
did too. I saw the
Instead of
25K in there.
25.
That was a holdover from the previous
Okay.
discussion where it was only at.
Because we'd already
25.
upped it
So
to
we
Yeah, we
got
did
the
up
value
it.
to actually convert the
Okay.
Right,
project.
so that one, okay, so that,
And
I
we
would-
also talked about, we want to make sure there's some money in the funds for branding on the West Davis corridor, because we know that
Yeah.
that's going to be crucial to kind of setting a
What's a
frame.
reasonable value for
And-
that? I mean,
I think we won't really know until we start to see some of the budgets of.
We know
So
the
currently
60K.
Glen Eagles is slated for 2026.
Right.
Yeah,
And
we're
it'll
way
be
out.
So I'm okay
falling
to pull that
apart.
forward.
But here's another thing too, like the cemetery shed, when it does rain, holy cow, that thing floods. And
Yeah.
It's terrible.
But the thing is, you can't really do that until you have the
Until
other
you're ready to,
facility
yeah.
built, so you can have it empty to
I would
renovate.
agree with that.
And this is
True.
something that I wanted to bring to the table that was not on this list, but I would strongly consider putting park maintenance facility equipment so that when we open that, we have things like lifts for the mowers. We can speed up their time so
Chris is over
much.
there smiling. I've never seen that smile get so big so fast.
Having talked to some people who work in this for a couple of other cities, having the right tools just frees up so much of their time. And where we've struggled there, having lifts, having the right bays that can do this, the building will be there, but we didn't really talk about the stuff that has to go in there. And that's, if we put that years out, we're just compounding the
So I
problem
think
of
what
later.
you just
Facilities
said
have to
is
do
that
with
you
it.
don't agree with yourself about keeping that money in savings and you want to actually.
I'm saying there's multiple ways. I prefer to keep it there overall, but
See, my thing is,
Many ways to skin the cat.
But yeah, I
and
mean,
this is what we talked about last time, is we have some pretty big unknowns right
We
now in
do.
the city. The primary, one of which is improvements for the freeway. And I don't want to do that halfway. I want to make sure we do it well. I don't want to dedicate just enough to fail. I want it to make sure that it's sustainable. I don't want to just throw some rocks down and hope it looks okay 10 years from now.
Well, here's another thought with that, is that I'm not sure what the budget was for Glen Eagles Drive. Do you know? I'm just saying that might.
Yeah, it's 85,000.
Oh, 85, okay, that's
but
not,
that's spendable and that doesn't eat it all up.
yes. I would say also fix that dang clock. I'm all for that.
Oh,
So
I don't think
I'm
that's our
sorry.
job.
Well, but if we're part of those.
We're working on
10
that, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right.
You're gonna be happy.
I get more.
Okay.
Not just the clock, the trim too.
Sweet.
Wait, I get
more
that's part of the RDA. That's not this.
I'm just saying, I get
Yeah.
lots and lots of comments about that being the appearance of our city.
Totally agree, and that's why I
With a
want to
different
make
budget, you can
sure.
manage it, So
So you're right on the track where I want to go, is I want to make sure that we do our signage well. I want to make sure our parks are well signaged. I also want to make sure that as we're going through, we keep talking about walkability and transit. And right now there is a e-bike bill in the federal government that you might start seeing e-bikes zipping all over this town. But right now we don't have the infrastructure to support that. So I'd like to dedicate money to some of those trails to make sure that when all of these scooters that were just authorized and e-bikes that are coming online and our trails finish up, that we have a safe place for those riders to move around the city. So I want to make sure we are setting aside money for our trail systems and wayfinding.
We need to prioritize these things.
So I think that's exactly what we're saying.
Right.
So maybe.
So those are my priorities.
My highest priority would be to put some money aside till I mean, that's my highest. But if we're gonna spend this money, I do Glen Eagle Drive, if we fix a road like that, then it doesn't deteriorate to the point that we have to spend twice as much to fix it.
But the problem
So
is,
I'm big on that.
so Glen Eagle is a 2026. I'm
And if it's
assuming
not
it's there
gonna make
for
it
a
there-
reason. I'm wondering, are some of these others that are in 2022 more important?
If it's not gonna make it there, well, I don't want it to pull forward just because we can afford it.
That's what I'm saying.
But if it's not gonna make it to that date that we have it scheduled, I'd rather fix it while it's cheaper to fix than when we have to pay double to fix it.
No doubt. This is for an overlay. This is not a tear up and replace.
So it would
It's a resale.
sound.
No,
like
it's not a
it needs
resale,
to
it's an
be
overlay.
next.
It's an actual tarp, top.
Kind of, yeah.
How long will that last?
Something like that is real simple to do if we have another project going on at the same time that has asphalt work and we could just.
We
throw
just
that
add it
in.
on.
It's very simple to do something like that.
Because as far as overlays, apparently this thing, Syracuse Meadows, is a higher priority than Glen Eagles.
And I haven't
Don't
driven
touch
down
Syracuse
Meadows.
Could I make a suggestion?
Yeah,
I would
oh,
love one.
please.
I like what Dave said, that we can put this money away, we don't have to act on it right away.
And that's what I'm saying is,
Why
I
don't we
see
make this
futures.
part of the next budget session in
I think you're,
January?
mhm.
Unless there's something really pressing that
No.
you pull out and say, let's do
What's the
it.
timing on the parks
Who
maintenance
knows?
facility?
we're another year out, aren't we?
I'd say do a road or two because there's always gonna
Yeah,
be.
but that means
behind.
we
And,
practice
and we
it,
need,
yeah.
and we need
So
to
if by
dedicate some of
January we
this
talked about
to the
it.
regional park.
Yeah,
Otherwise, we've got to keep saving the regional park.
I
I feel
agree.
like we are deficient. Well, we know we're deficient. And so anytime we have some money to sock away to the regional park, we need to do so.
If there's any construction projects, yeah, if there's any construction projects that would be, we would want done in the next spring.
The only one I
We
can
would
think of is
probably want to
2,500.
allocate now, though, not next budget season.
So then one I can think of that would fall in that category would be the 2,500 west extension to 193. But we have some work to do on that.
yeah, that's, I don't think I'm ready to make a decision on that until we really understand the.
Well, so I want to make sure we're doing work on it.
It's
I don't want to let that
definitely a
slip.
Yeah, but I'm not ready
have
to
to.
budget.
But we have to start planning now. It's, I mean, with the temple coming online. and
Yeah,
SR
we
193
need
and
that
attracting
access.
businesses,
Well, it's
They-
not. gonna
they
be
have
until
said
next
no.
year.
Well, I know, but
Yeah.
I'm
You need
saying
eminent
that
domain.
there
We don't
has
own
to
it.
be.
Okay,
No, you gotta buy the
we're
land.
gonna,
You
yeah, we
gotta
still
buy
have
it.
to do that first.
Well,
And that's why I think we need to
I
start working.
shouldn't, you don't need eminent
gotta
domain, but
start
currently
working on
the
it.
owner is not willing to sell.
Even to, for access to the temple.
Yes.
It's gonna be a problem, and we've already had a business turn away because we didn't have a road there.
I agree. And that's why I think if we had to pick a road to prioritize in the city, it would be 2,500 west.
Okay, so I'm gonna
I
suggest
said
that,
at the budget retreat.
I'm gonna suggest that we
You're
probably
wise.
can't make this decision tonight, but we could certainly.
We can put the
propose that
money
we
away.
Put the money away
Yep.
and talk about our
Work
priorities.
on it in January.
I don't know that-
Projects for this spring.
Yeah, and we might,
Be bumped up.
and come next year, we might have to
I mean,
dedicate some
didn't we
money
just
into
say
park
that-
restoration.
But didn't we just say the parks maintenance facility needs equipment by spring? Didn't you
Well,
just
she
say-
said they'll be done
They'll
by spring,
probably
so we can.
break ground in spring, right? They won't
Yeah.
break ground in
Yeah,
the winter.
she said
So
January.
when would
So
we
that
spend
probably
the
we
next
could put it-
budget year.
Yeah.
that
In the
one.
next
That's okay.
So that means
Yeah.
it's out of this.
I think saving this, not adjusting our rainy day fund, but putting this into
Putting
our,
it
into
it, Right.
our savings, and let's try and allocate this, because we know we have a lot of projects that are right on the horizon. I
Okay,
wanna
so
try
I'm
to-
hearing consensus on that, so I'm gonna move us on. Continued discussion,
But did we set priorities?
No,
no, but
Do
do
we
we
want
to do
do we
that?
have
I mean,
to?
are we going to say-
We don't
I
have to at
think
this
that
point.
it-
It sits
it
in the
will
capital
change.
project.
If it sits, yeah,
they will
so,
change in 6
All right,
months.
I'm good with
That's
that.
fine.
okay, so, next item.
5 months, whatever.
Prepare our discussion of fiscal year truth and taxation scheduled for August 10th.
Okay, there's nothing new here. This is all things you've seen before, but this is just part of the process of the truth and taxation. You saw the advertisement that will go in the newspaper. We also have to do a combined ad. The county's doing that for us. You'll see that as well. I think virtually every city in Davis County is
Yeah.
raising
Yeah, for
taxes.
Yeah,
paramedic
except
service.
Layton, right?
I have
Layton's even
a-
raising theirs,
Oh,
but it's
they're
not
raising,
for
but not for
paramedic
paramedic.
related.
It's because they're doing a new fire
I
station.
had a gentleman from Clinton call me today and asked
Another
me
one on
what
top
our
of that.
rates were and theirs. What we're doing.
So I don't know that there's anything more to discuss other than it's the hearing scheduled.
Yeah.
We've already talked about the why and we've already get it ready to publish. So
You're giving
Yeah,
a presentation on
So
that.
at
Any
the
reason-
hearing,
On
it'll be
the
similar
fifth.
to previous years where we'll have a presentation of
and then a
what it's
Q&A,
about and then like a public hearing.
which
Most,
we can respond to, right? Because that's usually every year we've had
Yeah.
to do one.
I mean, you can respond during a.
Yeah.
public
Because
hearing.
it's an advertised discussion.
Presiding person, is that the one that you want to give a response or not?
Yeah. The
Okay.
town hall meeting will also be interactive more.
And that'll
than-
be before that meeting.
And that'll be
Yes.
August 5th. But yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to move us on to continue discussion regarding adjustments to city council rules of order and procedure regarding electronic meetings.
Thanks, Steve.
So this is a follow-up from, because maybe about 2 months ago, we had an initial discussion where we're, hey, if we're gonna have these electronic meetings, let's have some more rules. So we put together, this was based on the suggestions there. So I can share my screen if you want, or if you got the packet. in front of
Now,
you.
we read the packet, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, so,
I
yeah,
just had
discussion.
one thought, or one of these that stood out to me was that they needed to keep their camera on, the council members, and I thought
When it's.
sometimes that can't be done.
And I think that there's a clause.
The clause in there says as long as it's
Feasible or
feasible,
something.
yeah.
Okay,
Because I had no internet signal. that
Yeah,
would get
that-
enough
Right.
data.
I
had the
had
phone,
one
and that was it.
same, yeah.
Because yeah, that was also, like, if I have one of my little kids running in their underwear, I reserve the right to turn off my
Turn
camera.
off the camera.
Because they do that sometimes.
They better not be right.
You do that sometimes. I do that sometimes.
So, but my concern with, the only one that I really have a concern with is where it leaves it completely open to decide to attend remotely or not. And I kind of feel like the spirit of the Open and Public Meetings Act is that the public get a chance to face the people making decisions on their behalf.
Well, maybe they want to face one person and they're not there, you know?
Maybe, but I guess my point in general is if you leave it completely open, that, I mean, we all have times we're out of town. That
Yeah.
works. Being on remote totally works. I have no problem. But if we're in town, I had what somebody suggest to me this last week, that were they elected, they would never come. They would just do it all remotely.
I've heard that.
And I think that doesn't meet the spirit of the law. The law really says that you should be able to come to an anchor location and face the people that are making decisions on your behalf. I mean, because you could totally shield yourself and say, well, I'm never going to be in front of these people, so
Well,
it doesn't matter what I say.
I was wondering the same thing. If we want to create some type of requirement that
X number of meetings.
75% in-person meeting attendance.
And the other part of that really is that it says, you've written into this policy that if somebody gets dropped, then the meeting, and we don't have a quorum anymore, the meeting's not over. And I would hope that.
No, the meeting is
It
over
is over if there's no.
If
quorum.
if there's not a quorum present.
Right.
Okay.
So you have
Still
to
a
read
quorum
that
minutes.
carefully.
Yeah,
Oh, I misread that then,
Yeah.
because I was like, holy cow,
yeah.
somebody gets dropped and we only have two people. Oh,
I
we're
read
still
it-
gonna
I
do
read it
this.
Twice as well.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
failure
Okay.
is not required to end unless there's no longer a quorum present.
Yes,
Okay,
and then
I
it's
misread
done.
that. I'm sorry, but that, because I did, I went, that can't work.
No worries.
There's no way we do that legally. All right.
But yeah,
So that's
certainly,
my
yeah,
concern.
If you want to put in requirements of a certain number at an anchor location, or you want to have a limit on the number you can do in a year, or if you want to have a, if you are in town, you have to be here in person, or these are your rules.
I kind of think that
But
maybe
if
a
you're
way to
in
address
town
it
and you're
is,
sick, don't come.
right,
Dang it.
I'm good with that. And there's a meeting that Jordan would have attended from that, and I'm okay with that too. I would say though that we have to have a quorum here in case, because if you have a quorum, unless the whole meeting's remote and you start getting people randomly drop off, you can't continue the meeting. So I would say that a quorum has to be present at the anchor location. That's just a suggestion.
I like that. I just don't know how you accomplish that because then it's me calling you and going, hey, are you gonna make the quorum or am I making the
Right,
quorum?
it's.
Well, I
it's that
do
whole-
think somebody's got to make
That's a
sure
little
But
that,
then you
I just
end
don't
up
know how
having like work schedules, you know?
And
like,
that would also mean that our
who's gonna be
entire
here?
past history of COVID would have prevented us
No,
from
because
saying
that
having
was
a
an
single
emergency
fully-
order.
and fully
Yeah, we have the
electronic.
emergency
the
authorization.
emergency authorization works.
We
and
do, but there's the problem though of, okay, and then signing up for vacation days at work, that's kind
We'd have a
of the
vacation
situation.
calendar for the
Yeah.
And
council.
it seems ridiculous, it's just.
I don't think,
A
They should be like
planned
a
absence, you should mention before the meeting that you, I mean, at the meeting prior.
but if we have, let's
I
say
just
we
think
have, let's say we have 3 of us that are on vacation. And each of us are expecting to be with a stable internet connection
Yeah.
and be online. I
see
don't
no
think you
problem.
cancel a city council meeting because of
Absolutely,
that.
because then you're delaying city business. And for no reason.
Okay, that's a good
What was the
point.
old rule? Was
So,
it 2?
There wasn't a rule before on how
Yeah.
many.
Oh, because I
Well,
was told you couldn't
yeah,
miss
we,
more than
you
2.
couldn't miss more than
You
2 a
couldn't
year.
Yeah.
That was the old rule. You couldn't miss more than 2 in a year.
Vacancy, yeah.
So I thought you meant 2 people. Yeah, we didn't have a rule
Oh,
about
sorry,
people,
yeah.
but yeah, we did have a rule.
We
about
had to have a
how many.
rule about you couldn't
So it
miss.
seems like we just need to be a little more liberal in that application and just say something more like 10% of the whole 26 meetings or
You
whatever
know,
it is. Or,
I am concerned that if we all vacationed at the same time, we kind of not, I don't know.
yeah, I just don't know how we would get the full quorum.
Well,
I just know that I
chances-
didn't, when I went to Alaska, I didn't call any of you guys to okay it with you.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
That's
but I'm
that's
okay.
the other thing too, is I don't want to have to check with everybody to say, oh, hey, I scheduled this vacation time. Is that okay? Are you gonna be gone too? Do you see what I'm saying? That's.
The most we've
I don't
ever
know.
actually had were 2. We've never had 3 people.
Exactly. The
Right.
chances are so small. We'd all be gone at the same time. It's never
So-
happened
so-
before.
I think we need to focus on, I agree that we should have an in-person attendance requirement for the council.
There you go.
I think that's reasonable. And that will probably mitigate most of these other issues we're talking about. And so I don't know where you want to set that. 75%, 95%, 50%, pick a number.
Well, I could just kind of think that the unwritten rule should be that if you're in town and not ill, you should be here.
Agree.
I mean, that should
Can
be the
you just
unwritten
write
rule.
that?
I'm just, huh?
Can we just write
Can
that?
you just make it a written rule
Because if you're in town
and
and
not
well,
excused for
physically
illness?
well, don't say
But
mentally.
there's
well,
been
physically
times
well.
that, but at the same time, there's also been times where you might get stuck on the freeway. Like sometimes I can't,
Okay.
and you can call and maybe do part of the meeting from remotely. So what I'm saying,
The intent.
yeah, so,
We also have to know who's.
so if you want to say,
Nobody's gonna-
so why don't you just say, look,
But see, that would
We
be out
actually
of
had
town.
removal
If you were
rules.
stuck
You're
in traffic.
currently
you're
not in
out
town.
of town.
well, there will be a freeway in town.
Yeah,
Just saying.
that's what I'm saying, a little more liberal.
But you'd be on your way here, so it's,
So what I would say is say, we require 90% in-person attendance.
I think that's.
90% only allows you 1.5 meetings.
I think that's.
That's even
Okay.
stricter than
Eight-
before.
80%,
So pretty
while
much
allowing for extenuating circumstances.
for the previous rule.
Actually,
applies.
it's typically 22, because a lot of times in November and
Right,
December.
we don't.
Yeah.
We don't get that second.
So pick your number, but I do want to allow for extenuating circumstance. I want to be like, that was your third meeting.
Oh,
and-
exactly.
We already said that was going to be the
Well,
I would
case.
say at least 3 meetings. they can-
And
are
like, we
excused
had
because
one,
you can-
Yeah,
sorry.
I mean, people on vacation 3 weeks.
Well,
out of
then
the
I
year.
say, once again, we go back to if you're in town and well, and less extenuating
Just
circumstances.
Right.
You should be in
Like-
attendance.
like we
I'm
had-
okay with that.
We
At
had,
home
the
on
only
vacation, okay.
exception I would, well, extenuating. We had a gal on Mosquito Bay whose husband was severely ill for several months and she called in as often as she could.
And once again,
And
there's extenuating.
No
right?
penalty at all, but she.
So
we-
I'm
yeah,
okay with that
extenuating.
guideline. If you're in town and healthy, you're expected to be in attendance with,
Unless
unless there are unforeseen circumstances.
And ultimately, this body is the policing body for these rules. So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, if a
If it
meeting
ends
is
up being
held
abused,
against the rules, it doesn't even allow like the applicants to challenge what happened. It's basically, if you think someone's abusing it,
We get a
it's
censure,
up to you. Yeah, you can
Yeah.
take some action.
Take a vote.
a vote of censure.
Anyway, my
Yeah.
concerns were out. Does anybody have any new concerns?
No.
That's not-
Yeah,
The only other thing is make sure that the camera, this says requires council members to keep
I think
that camera's
that's
on, but I think
good
down if you
idea.
look at the actual ordinance, it does say,
Yeah.
it does make that allowance for
Right.
things happening. Like if your house is burning down, you can turn off your camera.
I think
Again, I
that's
think it's about the
extenuating.
policing piece,
Yeah.
because
Okay,
until somebody makes an issue with it, it's not
Yeah.
gonna, I mean, I'm okay if you're turning the camera off for what you described earlier.
Yeah.
I
Or
got
your
you.
children or something
Yeah.
weird.
okay.
And you
So-
can even grant an exception if, someone misses their 4th meeting or something. But
Sure.
there's certain issues you can all agree that, no, that's.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it sounds like what you'd like is you'd like an additional section that just mandates in-person attendance as long as you're in town and you're well, unless there are certain extenuating circumstances. I won't say certain, unless there are extenuating circumstances. So I can make that change. Do you feel like you're ready to vote?
I think I'm okay with this on the
Yeah,
consent with those changes.
Without the language, usually you like to see it. I mean, it's up to you.
Finalized.
If you want to
All right,
consent,
so
you can.
let's just
That's up to
see
you.
it.
Not,
We
not
should
consent.
review
No, let's just see
We
it.
should
and put it on the next.
I mean, you'll see it before you hit.
I think that's a good
consent.
policy to always see it if we haven't read it.
Agreed.
All right, discussion of future items for our council announcements. Let's go this way,
Sure. I don't think I actually have any right now.
and that's okay.
So the Parks and Rec, Parks Committee has met. I'll be sending you out the report shortly. I attended that remotely. Not sent out my notes, but primarily focused around, we heard from both the BMX club, and they are still kind of working through that. It'll be interesting. I know I've given you guys some updates, but that is making progress. And we're going to have some decisions to make on the football league, depending on how we want to go. And I'll include all that in my report. The other item is I'm putting together a Meet the Candidates night for August 2nd. That it will not be a city function. This is something that I am just sponsoring just because I haven't met half of the candidates and I would like to meet them. And so this was kind of a way for me to meet them and hopefully get the rest of Syracuse out to meet
My
them as well.
question is, have you even reached them all? 'Cause
Yes, every single one of them has received an email from me. I got all of their email addresses from Cassie and they have an email in their inbox. And
okay,
as-
I was
assuming they
wondering
put-
if they responded, because
Some have responded,
If they
But-
don't want to show. you
but
can't
they are
force
all
them.
invited. This will be the only Meet the Candidates event for City Council that I'm aware of. So
Is
if
it only
they,
in city council? or
but
is it
you've
a-
decided to make it a meet and greet, it's not a debate.
it's not a debate, it's not a
Some Q&A.
a Q&A for the whole, with 9 or 8 or however many there are now, I know some are withdrawn. It will be complicated to try and hold a Q&A for that many people. So primarily it'll just be a table they can put a sign on. They are not supposed to tape anything to the walls. So
Will this be
Where is
here?
this at?
right now it will be at the library. So the library has their meeting room and it will be there.
How many are being chosen for the primary? Do we know?
I believe it's 4.
Or
It's
double
always
the-
double
double
the
spots?
seats.
4 council members.
And
Two
2
mayor.
for mayor.
So and that's everything I have.
What time did you say again?
So I think I'm going to plan for 6:30 is generally that allows a lot of people to get home from work and things like that. So we'll probably do 6:30 until the library closes, wants us to stop at 8:30. So it'll be a 2-hour window for people to meet those candidates. We have said the mayoral candidates are invited, but I haven't heard back from any of them if they want to attend. So
I have nothing. I don't have anything new for illumination or anything for any of my liaison positions. We just had typical meetings and nothing new to discuss. So to you.
I got Zeppies to agree to come to illumination,
There you go.
and I'm trying to get 2 more food trucks, trying to get some sort of chicken place. Anyway, been difficult because COVID's been pretty mean and nasty to the food truck business.
notice that there were a lot fewer.
There are
Yeah.
a lot of them have just closed up. Not doing it anymore.
They're my
So
favorite.
if you happen to run into a really good one and you got a good suggestion, just text it to me, please, because I need 2 more. So that's all I got.
Call, what's the one that they also have a storefront? A cup up.
Okay,
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm good with that.
nothing new to report from my committees from last meeting. Brody, do you have anything?
Yes, I do. So Night Out Against Crime, August 25th. Also, and that's here, right? Centennial. Couple other things. So reminder, town hall meeting, August 5th. We'll be
Wait.
talking secondary water and paramedics. Format there, we'll have a staff presentation on each issue, Q&A for staff or elected officials from the public, depending on the question.
How are you going to select who responds to the question?
That's something you need to work out with the mayor. I would suggest that, the mayor direct traffic, but leave it open to whoever wants to answer the question. So that, because there might be differing opinions on the council on how to answer or.
Well, I just don't want to have be like, what about this? And we're all staring at each other. Who's going to take this? Do you want it? Do you want
Yeah.
it? Do you want it?
Obviously, technical type stuff, just refer to staff.
Okay.
And, that's the.
Anything that's opinion based.
And then anything, yeah, if there's a question on what, a policy direction the city should take, that's definitely your realm. And so then you can say, your opinion. You're not really speaking on behalf of the council. This is a town hall, so it's say, well, I think, that this is what we should do.
But there will be room for a dissenting voice if there is one. I think
That's
that's
what I would
important.
encourage, yeah, and I think the mayor's okay with that, so.
Okay,
I can't speak for him because he's not here, but I would think he is.
okay.
Are you talking dissenting from the council or from the people or all of the
No, from
above?
I mean, if somebody says something.
I hate
because these are-
paramedics.
No, no, but if somebody says, well, like, I can't speak for the whole council, I could speak for me, but if somebody said on my behalf, well, I think that we should make everybody pay this water tax and I don't agree, I feel like I should be able to say, well, I'm not in favor of that, because I don't want people to say, just blanketly say, oh, all those council people agreed to this.
I hope that we're allowed to express ourselves in that manner.
I hope.
Otherwise I'd be upset.
Yeah, it doesn't really fulfill the purpose of a town hall. Right. For now.
Okay.
So that's August 5th, 6 PM here in Chambers. And then the last thing, Robert and I attended an emergency meeting with Weber Basin earlier today. So what they're watching right now is fall precipitation, because that's what sets the stage for runoff. Because if you get enough saturation in the soil in the fall, then the snow comes and it actually runs off instead of absorbing into the ground, which is what's happened this year. The dry soil conditions is really what's contributing to the severe drought this year. If that continues, they'll have to move into the next step of restrictions with water, which would be a 60% decrease in water allocation, secondary water, and a 10% decrease in culinary.
Oh, wow.
Now that's Weber Basin. So this year they reduced 20%, but Davis and Weber, where we get most of our water, went to the 50 or whatever it was, 55%. So it's by extrapolation, if Weber Basin goes to 60%, Davis and Weber will probably be at 75, 80. We may have a struggle even operating the system at all next year if that is the case. With the addition of the 10% culinary, we do start to get into the question of how we want to handle future usage and discussion of allowing additional development for a short time period till we know how next year is actually going to turn out. So we'll probably be bringing that to a work session of how we want to manage that, knowing what we know now from Weber Basin.
Is there an opportunity for us to codify the restriction of an HOA cannot disallow xeriscaping?
It's the attorney.
Good question. I know the state has, if the state's preempted us, then we wouldn't be able to. I don't think they've really gone into that specific territory yet. So likely we would be able to if we wanted to do that. Yeah.
Because that's the biggest complaint I see is I have a lot of people that have talked to me that want to xeriscape, but run into restrictions from their HOA. And they're like, I would love to flip my strip, but my HOA does not allow that. And so I think we ought to look at removing that ability to allow people to be conservation minded, if you will.
Or just any of those turf requirements and time to put in yards, all that stuff. It all needs to be kind of reviewed.
Agree.
I do think that's going to be an interesting question though, because when you start there, how much can you restrict what an HOA can require and can't require? Because
Sure.
HOA covenants can be
Up
crazy
to
and we may think they're insane, but those people agree to them by living there. So
It's true.
Agree.
I just don't know
We're still
how.
using our
But
water.
water
resources.
usage can be.
I like that. I'm not saying you're wrong.
Yeah.
As long as there's a pretty strong public policy purpose for what you could do it. I mean, yeah, the state's done it for a couple of things, including solar panels. They've said you can't.
You can't say you can't have them.
Yeah, not anymore. So it's there's a precedent for it.
I'd like to have that
cautious
discussion
on it,
item.
you know.
Yeah, I
I
would.
do know an HOA that wants to get rid of solar panels. I think it's kind of funny.
So yeah, I'd like to have that discussion item on a future agenda where we look at the code and look at a minimum, the park strip, where we know that a lot of water is wasted watering those, and just say, look, anywhere in the city, these can be flipped.
That's it.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Hey,
Okay, I do.
can I ask one more question on the town hall? setting, just a thought. So are we gonna be just sitting up at the rostrum up top, or is there a chance to not necessarily be like looking
That's-
down on everybody?
Yeah, that's open. We can bring in chairs if you want to sit in chairs.
I don't know. I'm not saying it's good either way, but I just do
Yeah.
foresee it looking more like just not a town hall and more of
Mm-hmm.
just more of a council
Council
meeting.
meeting.
I don't know what you guys think, but
I'd like to not be up there.
We said that one time before and we got
Did
down
not
right
work.
up close and it turned out to be less effective.
okay.
It
Yeah, I
was a
don't know
little
the answer. I
weird.
just.
Yeah, it wasn't just weird. I think people kind of I don't know. It was weird.
Okay.
It was
Yeah,
more than
it's
weird.
up to you how you want to handle that. We can arrange.
Maybe the venue doesn't really lend itself to that then, but
Yeah, I
in
mean,
different situations,
you could do the library or.
like in past years when we've done like the meet the candidate nights and you've done it at like the community center, for instance, or other places, it really went much better, in my opinion, where you're at right in front of the individuals and they're on your eye level. not
Yeah, there's a
stadium
difference though
seating.
between sitting like this, you
Yeah.
know, in same chairs as sitting like
No, the stadium
this.
seating
Because,
doesn't-
yeah,
it doesn't work.
it's hard to be like looking up at everybody.
When you're looking.
Okay, next town hall.
You don't want it to look more like a Coliseum when we're down the.
Yeah.
We're the Spartans in the middle, or the
Yeah.
gladiators.
And then there's some
Tigers are
thumbs
eating us.
down.
Okay, it is 9 o'clock and I declare us in adjournment. Perfect 3 hours.
I'm sorry.
No, I declared it while I was